The Wyoming dust hadn't even settled on her boots when Eliza Morgan made her decision. She would run. The stagecoach wheels still echoed against Silver Creek's wooden planks as she slipped behind the station, heart pounding like a war drum. But there, emerging from cottonwood shadows like he'd been waiting all along, stood Samuel Hayes, the stranger she was supposed to marry. His weathered face held no anger, only understanding. "You're free to leave," he said quietly, tipping his hat. "But stay 2 weeks. If you still want to go, I'll pay your fare east myself." Friends, this is a story of freedom, courage, and unexpected love in the American frontier. Follow me to the end and comment your city below. I'd love to know how far this tale has traveled. The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty main street of Silver Creek, Wyoming territory as the stagecoach rumbled to a stop outside Morrison's General Store. Inside, Eliza Morgan pressed her face against the window one last time, watching the unfamiliar landscape that was supposed to become her home. Her fingers trembled as they clutched the worn leather handle of her traveling case, the only possession she'd brought from Boston, containing everything she owned in this world. "Silver Creek, miss," the driver called down, his voice rough from trail dust. "End of the line for you." End of the line. The words echoed in her mind like a death sentence. Eliza forced herself to stand, smoothing the wrinkles from her navy traveling dress, her best dress, saved specifically for meeting the man whose advertisement she'd answered 3 months ago. Samuel Hayes, rancher, seeking hard-working woman for matrimony, must be willing to work. Children welcome. Good home promised. The other passengers had already disembarked, leaving her alone in the coach's dim interior. Through the window, she could see people gathering, curious faces drawn by the arrival of the weekly stage. They knew. Of course they knew. In a town this size, everyone would know about Samuel Hayes's mail-order bride. "Miss?" The driver appeared at the door, extending a calloused hand. "Mr. Hayes is waiting." But Eliza wasn't looking at the driver. Her gaze had fixed on the alley beside the station, narrow, shadowed, and most importantly, unwatched. If she could just slip away while everyone was distracted. She descended from the coach, her boots hitting the packed earth with a finality that made her stomach clench. The crowd parted, and through the gap, she saw him. Samuel Hayes stood beside a weathered wagon, his hat in his hands, dark hair slightly mussed by the morning breeze. He was taller than she'd imagined, broader through the shoulders, with the kind of quiet strength that came from years of working the land. His face was sun-weathered but younger than his letters had suggested, perhaps 35 to her 23. Their eyes met across the dusty street, and Eliza felt her carefully constructed plan begin to crumble. His gaze wasn't what she'd expected. She'd prepared herself for possession, for the hungry look of a man claiming property he'd paid for. Instead, she found something else entirely, a mixture of hope and uncertainty that mirrored her own. "Miss Morgan?" His voice carried clearly across the distance between them, deep and steady. She should go to him. She'd come all this way, accepted his money for the journey, but her feet wouldn't move. The weight of what she was about to do, bind herself to a stranger, in a strange land with no way home, crashed over her like a prairie thunderstorm. Samuel took a step forward, then stopped, seeming to sense her panic. Around them, the townspeople watched with poorly concealed interest. "Mrs." Morrison stood in her store doorway, flour still dusting her apron. The blacksmith had stopped mid-hammer strike. Even the saloon girls peered out from behind the bat-wing doors. "Perhaps," Samuel said, his voice gentle, but carrying clearly, "you'd like a moment to collect yourself after your journey. Mrs. Morrison, might Miss Morgan use your back room to freshen up?" Mrs. Morrison, a plump woman with kind eyes, immediately bustled forward. Of course, of course." "Poor dear, you must be exhausted. 3 days on that bone-rattling coach. Why, I remember when I first arrived." As the woman chattered, leading her toward the store, Eliza caught Samuel's eye once more. He gave her the slightest nod, as if to say, "Take your time. I understand." But he didn't understand. He couldn't possibly understand that she had no intention of becoming his wife. The back room of Morrison's General Store smelled of coffee and cinnamon. Mrs. Morrison poured water into a basin, still talking. "Mr. Hayes is a good man, dear, one of the best in the valley. You're lucky—" "Mrs. Morrison," Eliza interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is there Is there a back door? The older woman's hand stilled. She turned slowly, studying Eliza with eyes that had seen too much of frontier life to be easily surprised. Having second thoughts? I can't do this. The words tumbled out before Eliza could stop them. I thought I could, but standing there, seeing all those people looking at me like I'm some curiosity, some desperate woman who had to advertise herself like what? Like a woman taking control of her own future? Mrs. Morrison's voice was firm but not unkind. Dear, we've all made hard choices to be here. Every woman in this town has a story. The question is, what do you want your story to be? Eliza turned to the small window that overlooked the alley. I want to be free. Free. Mrs. Morrison repeated the word thoughtfully. And you think running will make you free? Staying certainly won't, the older woman sighed. The back door is through the storeroom. Turn left, and you'll find the alley. The eastbound stage comes through tomorrow morning. She paused. But Eliza, may I call you Eliza? Before you run, you should know something about Samuel Hayes. Eliza's hand was already on the storeroom door. What? His first wife died 3 years ago. Consumption. He nursed her himself for months, never left her side. Since then, he's had offers. Plenty of women would marry him in a heartbeat, but he chose you. He read your letters and chose you. He chose a fiction, Eliza said bitterly. I wrote what I thought he wanted to hear. Maybe. Or maybe he saw through the fiction to something real. Mrs. Morrison turned back to arranging items on a shelf. The choice is yours, dear. The back door's unlocked. Eliza didn't hesitate further. She grabbed her traveling case and slipped through the storeroom, past barrels of flour and shelves of preserved goods. The back door opened silently, and she stepped into the alley. The narrow passage between buildings was cool and shadowed, a stark contrast to the bright morning sun on Main Street. She could hear the crowd still murmuring, probably wondering what was taking so long. Her heart raced as she pressed herself against the rough wooden wall, edging toward the street that would lead to the boarding house where she could hide until tomorrow's stage. Running already? The deep voice made her gasp. Samuel Hayes stepped out from behind a stack of crates, his expression unreadable. He must have circled around while she was inside. I... Eliza clutched her case tighter, preparing to bolt. You're free to leave, he said, holding up his hands in a gesture of peace. I won't stop you, but hear me out first. There's nothing to hear. This was a mistake. I should never have... You're right. His agreement stopped her mid-sentence. It was a mistake. Mine, not yours. Eliza blinked, confused. What? Samuel removed his hat, running a hand through his dark hair. I shouldn't have done this. The letters, the arrangement. It wasn't fair to you. I was lonely and desperate, and I thought... He shook his head. It doesn't matter what I thought. What matters is that you're here now, scared and ready to run, and that's my fault. This wasn't how she'd expected this conversation to go. Where was the anger, the demands, the insistence that she'd taken his money and owed him? I'll make you a deal, Samuel continued. Stay 2 weeks. Not as my bride, just as a guest. See the ranch, meet the neighbors, understand what life here could be like. After 2 weeks, if you want to leave, I'll pay your fare back east, and we'll call it a lesson learned. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why would you do that? He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Eliza saw something in his gray eyes that made her chest tight. Because a marriage built on fear and obligation isn't a marriage at all. If you stay, I want it to be because you choose to, not because you're trapped. And if I leave now, then I'll walk you to the boarding house myself and make sure you get on tomorrow's stage safely. He put his hat back on. But I hope you'll give me 2 weeks to show you that this life, this place, isn't the prison you think it is. Eliza studied his face, searching for deception. She'd learned young to read men's faces. Her father's, when drink would turn him mean. Her uncle's, when his comfort after her parents' death had come with a price she'd fled Boston to avoid paying. But Samuel's face held only sincerity and a sadness that seemed to run soul deep. 2 weeks, she heard herself say. But I sleep in the house alone. The house is yours. I'll bunk with my foreman in the bunkhouse. And you won't expect anything? Only honest conversation and maybe help with the chickens. They're temperamental creatures, and I've never had the touch with them. Despite everything, Eliza felt her lips twitch toward a smile. You're entrusting your chickens to a complete stranger? Well, Samuel said, a hint of humor lighting his eyes, if you can handle Agnes, she's the red one with delusions of grandeur, you can handle anything Wyoming throws at you. The tension in the alley eased slightly. Eliza looked down at her traveling case, then back at Samuel. 2 weeks. She could survive 2 weeks. And if it was unbearable, she'd have the money to leave properly, not skulking away like a thief. All right, she said. 2 weeks. Samuel nodded and offered his arm. Shall we go face the gossips, then? I should warn you, Mrs. Morrison has probably told half the town you're here by now, and the other half is making up stories about why we're taking so long. Eliza hesitated, then placed her hand lightly on his arm. The cloth of his shirt was worn but clean, and she could feel the solid strength beneath. What will you tell them? The truth. That you needed a moment after your long journey, and that we're taking things slowly. Let them make of that what they will. They emerged from the alley together, and immediately all eyes turned to them. Eliza forced her chin up, meeting the curious gazes with as much dignity as she could muster. Samuel led her to his wagon, helping her up with careful courtesy. Welcome to Silver Creek, Miss Morgan, he said loudly enough for the gathered crowd to hear. I hope you'll find it to your liking. As the wagon rolled away from town, Eliza caught a glimpse of Mrs. Morrison in her doorway. The older woman gave her the slightest nod of approval, and Eliza realized that perhaps the storekeeper had known Samuel would be waiting in that alley all along. The road to Hayes Ranch wound through countryside that looked nothing like Boston. The landscape stretched endlessly, a sea of grass rippling in the wind, broken only by distant mountains that rose like blue shadows against the horizon. The sky was impossibly vast, a dome of crystal blue that made Eliza feel simultaneously small and oddly free. Samuel drove in comfortable silence, occasionally pointing out landmarks. That's Baker's Creek. Good fishing in spring. Those rocks mark the boundary between my land and the Stevenson spread, and that eagle's nest in the cottonwood has been there since before I arrived. How long have you been here? Eliza asked, grateful for neutral conversation. 7 years. Came out from Ohio after the war. His hands tightened almost imperceptibly on the reins. Needed space to forget some things, room to build something new. Eliza understood the weight of unspoken history. She had her own things to forget, her father's drunken rages, her mother's silent suffering, the fever that had taken them both and left her at the mercy of an uncle whose kindness had conditions she couldn't accept. And you? Samuel asked. Your letters mentioned Boston, but not much else. There wasn't much else worth mentioning. The lie came easily, wrapped in enough truth to be believable. I was a governess. The family moved to Europe, and I needed a change. He nodded, accepting the half-truth without pressing. Changes are what the frontier's for, I suppose. They rode in silence for a while longer before cresting a hill, and Eliza caught her breath. Below lay Hayes Ranch, not the rough cabin she'd imagined, but a proper house with a wraparound porch, glass windows, and even flowers planted along the front. A large barn stood to one side, corrals holding horses and cattle, and she could see chickens pecking in a fenced yard. Smoke rose from the chimney, and laundry flapped on a line. You have servants? She asked, surprised. Samuel chuckled. Just Cookie. He's the cook and general keeper of chaos. And my foreman, Jake, along with 3 hands. They're like family more than employees. He glanced at her. I hope that's acceptable. I know some women prefer to run their households alone. No, Eliza interrupted, still staring at the scene below. It's not what I expected. Better or worse? She considered lying, maintaining distance, but something about the genuine concern in his voice made her speak truthfully. Better. Much better. As they descended toward the ranch, a figure emerged from the barn. A grizzled, older man with a pronounced limp and a face that looked like it had weathered every storm Wyoming could throw at it. That's Jake, Samuel said. He came with me from Ohio. Saved my life more than once during the war, and I've been returning the favor ever since. Jake approached the wagon, his keen eyes studying Eliza with undisguised interest. So you're the lady Sam's been mooning over for 3 months. Jake, Samuel warned, but there was affection in his tone. What? Man reads your letters so many times we could all recite them. Dear Mr. Hayes, I was most pleased to receive your latest correspondence. Jake's impression was surprisingly accurate, and Eliza felt heat rise to her cheeks. That's enough, Samuel said firmly, though his own ears had reddened. Miss Morgan has had a long journey. Perhaps you could let Cookie know we're here. Jake tipped his hat to Eliza, a grin creasing his weathered face. Welcome to Hayes Ranch, miss. Don't let this one's serious face fool you. He's soft as butter underneath. As Jake limped away, Samuel helped Eliza down from the wagon. I apologize for Jake. He has no filter between his brain and his mouth. He seems protective of you. We protect each other. That's how it works out here. He gathered her traveling case. Let me show you the house. The interior was even more surprising than the exterior. Clean, well-furnished, with real glass in the windows and even some books on a shelf. A rocking chair sat by the fireplace, and curtains, actual curtains, framed the windows. It was clear a woman's touch had once graced these rooms, though dust had begun to settle in corners, and there was a masculine practicality to the current arrangement. Your wife, Eliza said softly. She decorated this. Samuel's jaw tightened slightly. Mary. Yes. She loved making things beautiful, even out here. He set down her case. I've maintained it as best I could, but it's lovely, Eliza interrupted, running her hand along the smooth wood of the dining table. Really? He showed her through the rooms, a kitchen with a proper stove, a parlor, 3 bedrooms. He paused at the largest. This would be yours. I'll have Jake help me move my things to the bunkhouse. Eliza peered inside. A large bed with a quilted cover, a wardrobe, even a small writing desk by the window that looked out over the mountains. It was nicer than any room she'd ever had. This is too much, she said quietly. I'm only staying 2 weeks. Maybe, Samuel said, or maybe not. Either way, you deserve comfort while you're here. A loud clanging from outside interrupted them. Samuel smiled. That's Cookie calling for supper. He'll be eager to meet you. He's been complaining about cooking for ungrateful cowboys for months. The kitchen was attached to the main house but had its own entrance. Cookie turned out to be a thin, energetic man with wild gray hair and an accent Eliza couldn't quite place. He took one look at her and declared, Finally! Someone who might appreciate proper seasoning. These heathens think salt is exotic. The hands, Jake, Cookie, and 3 younger men named Tom, Will, and Ben, gathered around a large table. Eliza expected awkwardness, the discomfort of being the only woman among strangers. Instead, Cookie loaded her plate with stew and cornbread while peppering her with questions about Boston cuisine. The younger hands were shy but polite, and Jake continued his good-natured ribbing of Samuel. Remember when Sam tried to cook for us that 1 week Cookie was laid up? Tom laughed. I swear the chickens ran when they saw him coming. The chickens run from everyone, Samuel defended himself. They're contrary creatures. Agnes especially, Will added. She's got a mean streak wider than the Platte River. Agnes? Eliza asked. The red hen, Samuel explained. The one I mentioned earlier. She rules the roost with an iron claw. The meal continued with stories and gentle teasing. Eliza found herself relaxing despite her earlier fear. These men weren't what she'd expected. They were rough, certainly, worn by hard work and weather, but there was a warmth among them, a chosen family forged by shared labor and mutual respect. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that Eliza had never seen in Boston's smoke-filled skies, Samuel walked her back to the main house. I'll let you settle in, he said. There's water in the pitcher and extra blankets in the wardrobe if you get cold. Wyoming nights can be chilly, even in summer. Samuel, she called as he turned to go. He stopped, looking back. Why did you choose me? Of all the letters you must have received? He considered the question, his profile outlined against the dying light. You wrote about watching the sunrise from your window and wishing you could follow it west. Most women wrote about what they could do: cook, clean, bear children. You wrote about what you dreamed. I figured a woman who still had dreams might understand a place like this. Before she could respond, he touched his hat and walked toward the bunkhouse, leaving her standing in the doorway of a house that wasn't hers, watching a sunset she'd never imagined, feeling something she couldn't name stirring in her chest. That night, Eliza lay in the too comfortable bed, listening to sounds she'd never heard in the city: coyotes calling in the distance, wind singing through grass, the creak of the house settling. She'd planned to count the days until she could leave, to maintain distance and protect herself from disappointment. But as she drifted toward sleep, she found herself thinking about Samuel's eyes when he'd talked about dreams, about Cookie's enthusiasm over her appreciation of his cooking, about Jake's protective teasing. She thought about Agnes the tyrant chicken and sunrise over mountains and the way the sky went on forever. 2 weeks, she reminded herself, just 2 weeks. But somewhere deep down, a voice whispered that 2 weeks might not be enough to understand this place, these people, or the man who'd offered her freedom when he could have demanded obligation. The next morning came too soon, announced by a rooster whose enthusiasm for his job bordered on the obsessive. Eliza dragged herself from bed, her body still aching from 3 days in the stagecoach. Through the window, she could see the ranch already alive with activity, men moving among the corrals, horses being led to water, and smoke rising from Cookie's kitchen. She dressed quickly in her simplest dress, a brown calico that had seen better days but was suitable for work. If she was going to be here for 2 weeks, she might as well be useful. It would make the time pass faster. Cookie greeted her with coffee strong enough to wake the dead and a plate of eggs and bacon. "Sam's already out with the herd," he informed her. "Man never could sit still past dawn. Jake's in the barn if you need anything, and I'll be here wrestling with bread dough that seems determined to defeat me." Could I help? The offer surprised even her. Cookie's face lit up. "Can you handle a temperamental oven that heats unevenly and has moods like a scorned woman?" "I spent 3 years cooking on a stove that only worked when it felt like it. I think I can manage." For the next hour, she worked alongside Cookie, learning the quirks of his kitchen while he regaled her with stories of his younger days as a camp cook for the railroad. It was comfortable, familiar in a way that surprised her. She'd always found peace in domestic work, the rhythm of kneading dough, the satisfaction of creating something nourishing. "You've got good hands," Cookie observed, watching her shape loaves. "Steady and patient." "That's rare." "My mother taught me. She said bread was like life. Rush it, and it falls flat. Give it time and attention, and it rises despite everything." Cookie nodded sagely. "Smart woman. Sam could use someone with that kind of wisdom around here." Before Eliza could respond, a commotion outside drew their attention. Through the window, she could see Jake leading a limping horse into the corral, with Samuel walking alongside, his shirt torn and dust covering him from head to toe. "What happened?" Eliza asked as they rushed outside. "Spooked by a rattler," Jake explained, examining the horse's leg. "Sam got thrown pretty good, but he managed to calm her down before she hurt herself worse." Eliza looked at Samuel, noticing now the scrape along his jaw and the way he held his left arm against his side. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," he said, but she could see the pain tightening the corners of his eyes. "It's not nothing. Come inside. Let me look at it." "Really, Miss Morgan, I'm inside. Now." The authority in her voice surprised them both, but Samuel complied, following her into the house while Jake tended to the horse. In the kitchen, she had him sit while she gathered water and cleaned cloths. His shirt was torn at the shoulder, revealing a nasty bruise already forming along his ribs. "Take off your shirt," she ordered, then blushed at her own boldness. "So I can see the damage properly." Samuel complied, wincing as he pulled the torn fabric over his head. Eliza tried not to notice the solid muscle of his chest, the scars that spoke of a violent past, the way his skin had been bronzed by years under the Wyoming sun. "This might hurt," she warned, beginning to clean the scrapes along his shoulder. "Can't be worse than falling off a horse," he said through gritted teeth. She worked in silence for a moment, then asked, "Does this happen often?" "Often enough." Horses are unpredictable creatures, and this land has plenty of ways to remind you it's dangerous. He sucked in a breath as she pressed on a particularly tender spot. But it's worth it. Worth broken ribs and rattlesnakes? Worth freedom, he said quietly. Worth building something with my own hands, answering to no one but myself and God. Worth seeing the sunrise over my own land every morning. His words resonated with something deep inside her. I've never owned anything, she admitted. Never had a place that was truly mine. You could, he said, and their eyes met. If you wanted. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility and fear in equal measure. Then Cookie burst in with his usual lack of timing. Sam, that fool horse of yours. Oh! He took in the scene, Samuel shirtless, Eliza's hands on his skin, and grinned. Well, don't mind me. It's not what it looks like, Eliza said quickly, stepping back. Looks like doctoring to me, Cookie said innocently. What else would it look like? Samuel pulled his shirt back on, hiding a smile at Eliza's flustered state. Thanks for the help, Miss Morgan. I should get back to work. You should rest, she countered. Those ribs need time to heal. Ribs don't heal from sitting around. Besides, we're moving the herd to the north pasture today. Can't delay that. She wanted to argue, but something in his tone told her it would be pointless. This was a man who'd work through any pain rather than show weakness. After he left, Cookie chuckled. You handled that well. Handled what? Sam? Most women either flutter around him like nervous birds or try to mother him to death. You just treated him like a person who needed help. He respects that. Eliza turned back to her bread dough, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. I was just doing what anyone would do. No, Cookie said thoughtfully. You did what you would do. There's a difference. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. Eliza helped Cookie with meals, learned to gather eggs, avoiding Agnes, who lived up to her reputation, and even assisted Jake with mending harnesses. The work was hard, but satisfying in a way her governess position had never been. There, she'd been invisible, a ghost tending to children who barely acknowledged her existence. Here, every contribution was noted and appreciated. As evening approached, she stood on the porch, watching the sun paint the mountains gold. Samuel appeared beside her, moving stiffly but steadily. How are the ribs? She asked. Sore but functional. How was your first full day at Hayes Ranch? Educational. I learned that Agnes is indeed a tyrant. Cookie used to be a bare-knuckle boxer in Chicago, and Jake has been trying to perfect the same joke about a horse and a preacher for 3 years. Samuel laughed, then winced, hand going to his ribs. Don't make me laugh. And yes, we've all heard that joke more times than we care to count, but no one has the heart to tell him it's not funny. It's kind of you all to let him keep trying. We look after each other here. It's the only way to survive. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the day die in spectacular color. Finally, Eliza asked the question that had been bothering her all day. Your wife, Mary, how did she die? Samuel's expression tightened, but he answered, consumption. It took her slowly, over months. She fought hard, but in the end, he trailed off, then continued. She made me promise to remarry, said the ranch needed a woman's touch, and I needed someone to keep me from turning into a hermit. Is that why you advertised for a bride? Partly, but also because I was lonely. The kind of lonely that eats at you from inside, makes you forget why you're working so hard in the first place. He looked at her. Your letters helped with that. Even before you arrived, just having someone to write to share thoughts with, it made a difference. Eliza felt guilt twist in her stomach. She'd written those letters out of desperation, not genuine interest. Samuel, I know, he interrupted gently. I know you were running from something when you answered my advertisement. I could tell from your letters, the careful words, the things you didn't say. It's all right, we're all running from something. What are you running from? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, the war. Things I did. Men I killed. My brother who died in my arms at Antietam. His voice was steady, but she could hear the pain beneath. I came west to escape those ghosts, but they followed me anyway. Mary helped quiet them for a while, But after she died, they came back, louder than ever. He turned to face her fully. That's why I won't force you to stay, Eliza. I know what it's like to be haunted, to need escape. If this place can't offer you peace, I won't make it a prison. Something shifted in Eliza's chest, a loosening of the tight fear she'd carried since Boston. This man, this place, they weren't what she'd expected. The frontier she'd imagined was rough and lawless, full of men who took what they wanted. Instead, she'd found unexpected gentleness, chosen family, and a man who understood that some wounds couldn't be seen. Thank you, she said softly, for understanding. Thank you for staying, even if it's just for 2 weeks. As he walked back to the bunkhouse, Eliza remained on the porch, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. 2 weeks, she reminded herself. But the reminder felt less like a countdown to freedom and more like a ticking clock on something she wasn't ready to name. The 4th day dawned with an unusual chill in the air, and Eliza woke to find frost kissing the window panes. She'd grown accustomed to the ranch's morning rhythm, cookies clanging pots, Jake's colorful cursing at stubborn horses, and the distant lowing of cattle. But this morning brought something different, voices raised in anger near the corral. She dressed quickly and stepped onto the porch to find Samuel facing down 3 men she didn't recognize. They sat their horses like they owned the earth beneath them, and the leader, a man with cold eyes and a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, was speaking in a tone that made her skin crawl. I'm telling you, Hayes, that water belongs to whoever can hold it. And from where I'm sitting, you don't have enough men to hold much of anything. The water rights came with the land deed, Dalton, Samuel replied, his voice steady but firm. You know that as well as I do. Dalton, so this was Vince Dalton, the man Cookie had warned her about yesterday. A former rustler who'd somehow acquired enough money to buy the neighboring spread and had been pressuring smaller ranchers ever since. Deeds can be lost, Dalton said, his hand resting meaningfully on his gun. Accidents happen. Fires start. Sometimes people just disappear. Jake emerged from the barn, rifle in hand, followed by Tom and Will. The tension in the air thickened like morning fog before a storm. That sounds like a threat, Samuel said quietly. Just being neighborly, sharing some wisdom about how dangerous this country can be. Dalton's gaze shifted, landing on Eliza. His smile turned predatory. Well, well. So the rumors are true. Sam Hayes got himself a mail-order bride. Eliza lifted her chin, refusing to show the fear coursing through her veins. She'd dealt with dangerous men before. Her uncle had taught her that showing weakness only encouraged them. I don't believe we've been introduced, she said coolly, stepping down from the porch to stand beside Samuel. Dalton touched his hat mockingly. Vince Dalton, ma'am. I own the Triple Bar Ranch to the south. You ever get tired of playing house with Hayes here, you'd be welcome at my place. I pay better than most for companionship. The insult was clear, and Eliza felt Samuel tense beside her. Before he could respond, she stepped forward. Mr. Dalton, I've been in Wyoming less than a week, but I've already learned to recognize the stench of manure. Funny how it clings to some people no matter how much they try to dress it up. Jake barked out a laugh, quickly covered by a cough. Dalton's face darkened, his hand twitching toward his gun. You've got a mouth on you, woman. And you've got 5 seconds to get off this property, Samuel said, stepping protectively in front of Eliza. Take your men and go. This isn't over, Hayes. The water rights are mine, legal and proper. You want to challenge that? Take it to the territorial judge. Otherwise, stay off my land. Dalton wheeled his horse around violently, causing it to rear. You're going to regret this, Hayes. You and your whore both. The word hung in the air like a slap. Samuel's hand went to his gun, but Eliza caught his arm. He's not worth it, she said quietly. Let him go. Dalton and his men rode off in a cloud of dust, but the threat lingered like smoke from a distant fire. Samuel turned to Eliza, his face tight with anger and something else. Shame, perhaps. I'm sorry you had to hear that. Dalton is a bully and a coward, Eliza finished. I've known men like him all my life. They only have power if you give it to them. Still, you shouldn't have to deal with that. This is my fight, not yours. She looked at him steadily. For the next week and a half, your fights are my fights. That's what partners do, isn't it? Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, gratitude, and perhaps a hint of hope. Partners, he repeated softly. Yes, I suppose it is. Jake approached, still holding his rifle. Boss, we might want to post a watch tonight. Dalton's been getting bolder lately, and with the lady here. Agreed. We'll take shifts. Samuel looked at Eliza. I want you to keep the bedroom door locked at night, and there's a rifle in the closet. Do you know how to use it? My father taught me, she said, not mentioning that the lessons had usually come when he was drunk and wanted to shoot bottles off the fence. I'm a fair shot. Good. I hope you won't need it, but hope doesn't stop bullets, she finished. I understand. The rest of the day passed under a cloud of tension. The men went about their work with weapons close at hand, and even Cookie kept a shotgun propped against the kitchen door. Eliza tried to maintain normalcy, helping with meals and mending, but her mind kept returning to Dalton's cold eyes and the promise of violence they held. That evening, as she helped Cookie serve supper, she noticed Samuel barely touched his food. You need to eat, she told him quietly. Starving yourself won't solve anything. I'm not hungry. Too bad. Eat anyway. She pushed his plate closer. Cookie worked hard on this stew, and you're going to appreciate it. Jake chuckled. Better do as she says, boss. She's got that tone my mother used to use. The tone that suggested dire consequences for disobedience? Tom asked. That's the one. Samuel picked up his spoon with a slight smile. I suppose I'm outnumbered. As the meal progressed, the tension gradually eased. Will told a story about a horse that had learned to open gate latches. Ben shared gossip from town, and Cookie complained about the rising price of coffee. It was almost possible to forget the morning's confrontation. Almost. After supper, Eliza found herself alone with Samuel on the porch again. It had become their evening ritual, these few minutes of quiet conversation while the sun set. You handled yourself well today, he said. Most women would have been terrified. I was terrified. I just didn't show it. She pulled her shawl tighter against the cooling air. My uncle taught me that lesson, though not intentionally. Samuel waited, not pushing, but offering silent invitation to continue. After my parents died, I went to live with him. He seemed kind at first, generous even, but kindness with conditions isn't really kindness at all. She stared at the darkening mountains. When I refused his conditions, he reminded me daily how dependent I was, how I had nowhere else to go. So I learned to hide my fear, to never show weakness. It was the only power I had. Is that why you answered my advertisement? To escape him? Yes, I thought a business arrangement with a stranger couldn't be worse than what I was facing in Boston. At least here, the expectations would be clear from the start. Samuel was quiet for a moment. And are they? Clear, I mean? She turned to look at him. You've been nothing but honorable, more than honorable. You've been kind without conditions. I'm not used to that. Everyone deserves kindness, Eliza. The use of her first name sent an unexpected warmth through her. Even mail-order brides who plan to run away? Especially them. It takes courage to travel across the country to marry a stranger, even more courage to admit when you're scared. Before she could respond, a sound made them both freeze, the distinctive crack of a rifle shot echoing across the valley. Samuel was on his feet instantly, his own rifle appearing in his hands as if by magic. Get inside, he ordered. Lock the door and don't come out until I tell you. But Eliza was already moving toward the sound. That came from the barn. More shots followed, and she could see muzzle flashes in the growing darkness. Samuel cursed and ran toward the barn, Jake and the others emerging from the bunkhouse with weapons drawn. Eliza grabbed the rifle from the bedroom closet and positioned herself at the window. She could see figures moving in the shadows, more than just Dalton's 3 men from this morning. They were trying to surround the barn where the horses were kept. A figure broke from the group, running toward the house. Without thinking, Eliza raised the rifle and fired. The man yelped and dove for cover behind the water trough. The house, someone shouted. There's someone in the house. 2 more men peeled off from the main group, heading her way. Eliza fired again, her shot splintering wood mere inches from one man's head. They scrambled back, clearly not expecting resistance from this quarter. The firefight intensified around the barn. She could hear Samuel shouting orders, Jake's rifle booming steadily. Then, horrifyingly, she saw smoke beginning to rise from the barn's far side. Fire! Cookie's voice carried across the yard. They're torching the barn! Eliza watched as Samuel ran toward the burning building, and her heart nearly stopped when she saw a figure rise from behind a wagon, rifle aimed at his back. She didn't think, just sighted and squeezed the trigger. The man spun and fell. The barn door burst open, and horses stampeded out, their terror-stricken whinnies piercing the night. Men scattered to avoid being trampled. In the chaos, she saw Tom go down, clutching his leg. Without conscious decision, Eliza left the house, rifle in hand, and ran toward the injured man. Bullets whined past her head, but she didn't stop until she reached Tom, grabbing him under the arms and dragging him toward cover. "You crazy woman!" Jake shouted, providing covering fire. "Get back to the house!" But she was already pulling Tom behind an overturned wagon, tearing strips from her petticoat to bind his bleeding thigh. "It's not bad," Tom gasped. "Just grazed me." "Shut up and let me work," she snapped, tying off the bandage with practiced efficiency. The fire was spreading now, hungry flames devouring the dry wood. Samuel and Ben were trying to save what they could, pulling equipment and feed out while dodging gunfire. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it ended. The attackers melted away into the darkness, leaving only the crackling fire and the acrid smell of smoke. "Let them go!" Samuel commanded as Will started to pursue. "See to the fire! Everyone, water buckets now!" They formed a bucket brigade, Eliza working alongside the men, her dress soaked and her hands blistering from the rope handles. But it was too late for the barn. They could only stop the fire from spreading to other buildings. As dawn broke, they stood exhausted, staring at the smoking ruins. Half the barn was gone, along with feed for the winter and much of their equipment. Several horses had fled into the night, though most had been saved. "I'm sorry," Eliza said quietly to Samuel. His face was blackened with soot, his shirt singed and torn. "For what?" "You saved Tom's life, and probably mine. I saw that shot you made from the house." "But the barn can be rebuilt. People can't be replaced." He looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You didn't have to leave the house. This wasn't your fight, remember?" She met his gaze steadily. "I thought we established that your fights are my fights. At least for another week." Jake limped over, a grim smile on his weathered face. "Hell of a shot, miss. Where'd a Boston governess learn to shoot like that?" "My father was complicated," she said simply. "Drinking made him paranoid. He thought teaching his daughter to shoot would keep her safe from the world. Ironic, considering the danger usually came from him." Cookie appeared with a pot of coffee, somehow having managed to keep his kitchen intact. "Well, I'd say you've been properly welcomed to Wyoming now. Nothing says howdy like a good old-fashioned barn burning." Despite everything, Eliza found herself laughing, a slightly hysterical edge to it, perhaps, but genuine. These men had just lost so much, yet they were making jokes, already planning the rebuild. "We'll need supplies from town," Samuel was saying. "Jake, can you and Will make the trip?" "What about Dalton?" Jake asked. This was him, no question. No proof, though. His men wore masks, and I'd bet anything he was conveniently in town with witnesses. Samuel's jaw tightened, but we'll handle Dalton in time. Right now, we rebuild. As the sun climbed higher, townspeople began arriving. News traveled fast in the valley, and neighbors came with lumber, tools, and willing hands. Mrs. Morrison brought food, clucking over Eliza's singed dress and blistered hands. "Land's sakes, child, you look like you've been through a war." "Just a small skirmish," Eliza replied, wincing as Mrs. Morrison applied salve to her burns. "Is that what we're calling it?" The older woman's eyes were knowing. "Dear, you could have been killed." "So could they. I couldn't just hide while they fought." Mrs. Morrison studied her for a long moment. "You're not what I expected when Sam said he was bringing in a mail-order bride." "I'm not what I expected either," Eliza admitted. Throughout the day, she worked alongside the others, learning to handle lumber, hammer nails, and ignore the ache in her muscles. She noticed how the community came together, How ranchers who competed for resources during normal times stood shoulder to shoulder in crisis. "It's the code," an older rancher named Peterson explained when she commented on it. "We might squabble among ourselves, but when someone like Dalton threatens one of us, he threatens all of us." "Will anything be done about him?" Peterson spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "Official-like? Probably not. But justice has a way of finding men like Dalton. Sometimes it just needs a little help." By evening, the skeleton of a new barn stood against the sky. It would take weeks to complete, but the frame was up, a defiant statement that Hayes Ranch would not be broken. Samuel found her sitting on the porch steps, too exhausted to move. "You should rest," he said, lowering himself beside her with a groan. "You've done more than enough today." "So should you. Those ribs must be screaming." "They're making their displeasure known," he admitted, "but I've had worse." They sat in companionable silence, watching the sun set behind the mountains. Finally, Eliza spoke. "I've been here 5 days." "I know. 9 more days until our agreement ends." "I know that too." She turned to look at him. "I don't want to talk about that right now." "What do you want to talk about?" "Tell me about Mary, not how she died. Tell me how she lived." Samuel's expression softened. "She was nothing like you. Quiet where you're bold, gentle where you're fierce. She loved flowers, spent hours trying to grow roses in this hostile soil. Never did succeed, but she kept trying right up until she couldn't anymore." "Yes. She would have liked you, though. Would have admired how you stood up to Dalton, how you fought beside us last night." "You don't have to say that." "I don't say things I don't mean, Eliza." He picked up a piece of straw, twirling it between his fingers. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Last night, when you left the house to help Tom, were you thinking about our agreement? About partners helping partners?" She considered lying, but found she couldn't. "No. I wasn't thinking at all. I just saw someone who needed help and moved. It was instinct." "Whose instinct? The governess from Boston or someone else?" "I don't know," she admitted. "I don't know who I am anymore. The woman who got on that stagecoach 5 days ago feels like a stranger. Maybe that's not a bad thing." "Maybe not." She stood, stretching muscles that protested every movement. "I should help Cookie with supper." "Eliza." She stopped, looking back at him. "Thank you. For everything. Thank you for not making me feel trapped." As she walked toward the kitchen, she realized the countdown in her head, 9 more days, had shifted from escape plan to something else entirely. Something that felt dangerously like a deadline for a decision she wasn't ready to make. Cookie was already at work, his domain one of the few spaces untouched by the night's violence. He looked up as she entered, his usual cheerful demeanor subdued. "How's the hands?" he asked, gesturing at her bandaged palms. "Sore but functional. What can I do to help?" "Sit and keep me company. You've done enough work for 3 people today." She sat at the small table where Cookie did his planning, watching him work. "Can I ask you something?" "Shoot, though after last night, maybe I should choose a different expression." "Why do you all stay? This life is so hard, so dangerous. You could find work anywhere. You're an excellent cook." Cookie paused in his stirring, considering. "You ever hear of the Battle of Chickamauga?" "During the war?" "Yes, vaguely. I was there. Young fool of 18 thought war would be glorious. It wasn't. It was mud and blood and boys screaming for their mothers." He resumed stirring, his movements automatic. "Samuel found me after. I was hurt bad, gut shot, left for dead. He was a lieutenant then, could have left me, should have really, but he carried me 3 miles to a field hospital. He saved your life." "More than that. After the war, I was lost. Couldn't settle anywhere, couldn't hold a job, kept seeing faces of men I'd killed, boys I'd watched die. Sam found me again, drunk in an Ohio gutter, and offered me work. Didn't ask for my story, didn't judge. Just said he needed a cook and thought I might do." "So you came west with him?" "Him and Jake and Mary. We were a strange family, but a family nonetheless. When Mary died." Cookie's voice roughened. "We all grieved. But Sam, He retreated into himself, worked from dawn to midnight, barely spoke except to give orders. Jake and I worried he'd work himself to death. Then the letters started, Eliza guessed. Then your letters started, Cookie confirmed. First time in 3 years we saw him smile while reading them. He'd share parts with us, your descriptions of Boston, your thoughts on books you'd read. You brought him back to life before you even arrived. But I wasn't being honest. Those letters were they? Or were you just showing a part of yourself you'd kept hidden? Cookie fixed her with a penetrating stare. Seems to me the woman who faced down Dalton and fought beside us last night is exactly who Sam thought he was writing to. Before she could respond, voices outside announced the return of Jake and Will from town. They entered carrying supplies, but also news that sent a chill through the room. Dalton was in town all right, Jake reported grimly. At the saloon until dawn, plenty of witnesses. But here's the interesting part. Sheriff Collins wants to see you, Sam. Says there's been a complaint filed. Samuel had entered behind them. What kind of complaint? Dalton's claiming you've been damming up Baker's Creek, depriving his cattle of water. Says he's got witnesses who saw your men working up there last week. That's a lie. We haven't touched the creek. Of course it's a lie. But Collins says he has to investigate. Wants you in town tomorrow to give your side. Eliza watched Samuel's face darken. It's a setup. While I'm in town, Dalton will try something else, Jake finished. That's what we figure too. I'll go with you, Eliza said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. To town. I need supplies anyway. My dresses are ruined and Mrs. Morrison offered to help me with new ones. It could be dangerous, Samuel warned. When has that stopped me so far? Jake chuckled. She's got a point, boss. The next morning, they set out early, Samuel and Eliza in the wagon with Jake and Tom riding alongside as escorts. Tom's leg was still bandaged, but he'd insisted he could ride. The town seemed different to Eliza now. 5 days ago, she'd seen it as a potential trap. Now she noticed details she'd missed. The carefully tended gardens behind some houses, children playing in the dusty streets, the way people nodded respectfully to Samuel as they passed. At the sheriff's office, Collins, a tired-looking man with graying whiskers, listened to Samuel's account with obvious skepticism about Dalton's claims. I know it's nonsense, Sam, he said wearily, but I've got to follow procedure. There'll need to be a hearing. Judge Waters will be through in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, Samuel repeated. And in the meantime? In the meantime, stay away from Dalton and that creek. I don't want this escalating. Outside, Samuel's frustration was evident. 2 weeks of letting Dalton do whatever he wants while we wait for a judge who will probably side with whoever pays him most. Have faith in the system, Eliza said, though she shared his doubts. The system hasn't done much for honest folks out here. They separated then, Samuel to the feed store, Eliza to Mrs. Morrison's. The older woman greeted her warmly, though her eyes held concern. Heard about the fire. Terrible business. We're managing, Eliza replied, fingering bolts of fabric. And you? How are you managing? I'm adjusting. Mrs. Morrison studied her shrewdly. That's not what I asked. I asked how you are, not how you're coping with circumstances. Eliza set down the fabric she'd been examining. I don't know. Everything's happening so fast. A week ago, I was planning to run. Now you're fighting beside them, rebuilding barns, facing down threats. Mrs. Morrison's voice gentled. It's all right to be confused, dear. The heart rarely follows the plans we make for it. My heart isn't involved, Eliza said quickly. This is still just an arrangement. 9 more days and then what? You'll leave? Go back to Boston and that uncle you were so eager to escape? There are other places. True. But will any of them have Samuel Hayes? Before Eliza could answer, a commotion outside drew their attention. Through the window, she could see a crowd gathering near the saloon. Her stomach dropped when she spotted Samuel in the center, facing off against Dalton and several of his men. She rushed outside, Mrs. Morrison close behind. They could hear Dalton's voice, loud and mocking. Hiding behind a woman's skirts now, Hayes, bringing your whore to town to protect you. Samuel's fists clenched, but he maintained control. Watch your tongue, Dalton. Or what? You'll shoot me in front of witnesses? Go ahead, Save the judge some time. Eliza pushed through the crowd, ignoring Samuel's warning look. Mr. Dalton, you seem obsessed with me. Should I be flattered or concerned for your mental state? Snickers rippled through the crowd. Dalton's face reddened. You've got a smart mouth, woman. And you've got a weak character, sir. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have legitimate business to attend to. She took Samuel's arm, attempting to guide him away, but Dalton grabbed her other arm roughly. No one walks away from me. Several things happened simultaneously. Samuel's fist connected with Dalton's jaw. Jake and Tom drew their weapons. Dalton's men reached for theirs, and Sheriff Collins appeared, shotgun in hand. Enough, the sheriff bellowed. Everyone calm down before I arrest the whole lot of you. Dalton, blood trickling from his lip, pointed at Samuel. You saw that. He assaulted me. I saw you grab a lady's arm, Collins replied evenly. Sam was defending her. Now get out of here, Dalton, before I decide to look more closely at where you were really last night when the Hayes barn burned. You can't prove anything about that. Maybe not. But I can make your life mighty uncomfortable while I try. Move along. As Dalton and his men retreated, Eliza felt herself trembling, not with fear, but with rage. How dare he put his hands on her? How dare he threaten everything Samuel had built? Are you all right? Samuel asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. I'm fine. Your hand? She'd noticed him flexing his fingers, knuckles already swelling. Worth it. Sheriff Collins approached them, expression grim. Sam, I can't keep looking the other way when you two clash. This has to stop. Tell that to Dalton. He's the one. I know what he is. But knowing and proving are different things. Keep your head down until the judge arrives. Please. As they loaded supplies into the wagon, Eliza noticed people watching them, some with sympathy, others with the avid curiosity of those who sensed drama unfolding. This is what you're signing up for, Samuel said quietly as they prepared to leave. Dalton won't stop. There'll always be men like him, trying to take what others have built. Then there need to be people willing to stand against them, she replied. He looked at her then with an expression that made her breath catch. Admiration mixed with something deeper, something that looked dangerously like love. The ride back to the ranch was quiet, each lost in thought. As they crested the hill overlooking the valley, Eliza was struck again by the raw beauty of the land. Endless sky, mountains that touched clouds, grass that rippled like a golden sea. It's worth it, she said suddenly. This place, this life, it's worth fighting for. Samuel glanced at her. Even for someone just passing through? I'm not just passing through anymore, am I? I'm here, part of this, at least for now. For 8 more days. Stop counting, she said sharply. Please, just let's stop counting days and see what happens. What about our agreement? Agreements can be renegotiated. Hope flickered in his eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying that I don't know what I want yet, but I know I'm not ready to leave. Not with Dalton threatening everything, not with the barn half built, not with... She trailed off, unable to voice the rest. Not with you, she thought, but couldn't say. That evening, as the ranch settled into its nighttime routine, Eliza found herself restless. The confrontation with Dalton had shaken something loose inside her. Not fear, but a fierce protectiveness she hadn't expected to feel. She wandered out to where the new barn stood, its skeleton frame silver in the moonlight. Samuel was there, checking the supports, always working. Couldn't sleep either, he asked without turning. Too much spinning in my head. I know the feeling. He faced her, the moonlight casting shadows across his features. Eliza. About today. You defended me. Thank you. I shouldn't have lost control. Violence isn't... Sometimes violence is the only language men like Dalton understand. She moved closer to him. My father was a violent man when he drank. I learned early that there are 2 types of violence, the kind that destroys and the kind that protects. What you did today was the second kind. I wanted to do worse, he admitted. When he grabbed you, when he called you, his jaw tightened. I wanted to kill him. But you didn't. You controlled it, used just enough force to make your point. That's the difference between you and him. They stood close now, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body in the cool night air. The moment stretched, taut with possibility. "Eliza," he said softly, "I need to tell you something." "No?" she said quickly, pressing her fingers to his lips. "Not yet. Not while our agreement stands. When the 2 weeks are up, when I'm free to choose without obligation, then tell me." He caught her hand, holding it gently. "And if you choose to leave, then at least we'll have had these moments of honesty." He pressed a kiss to her palm, the gesture so tender it made her chest ache. "You're stronger than you know, Eliza Morgan." "I'm learning that. This place, these people, you, are teaching me that." They stood there in the moonlight, hands clasped, neither willing to break the spell. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Dalton's schemes, the judge's arrival, decisions to be made. But tonight, in the shadow of the rising barn, they had this moment of peace, this connection that transcended their practical arrangement. Finally, reluctantly, they parted. As Eliza walked back to the house, she realized the countdown in her head had stopped entirely. She was no longer marking days until escape, but simply living each day as it came, letting the rhythm of ranch life and the bonds she was forming guide her toward a future she couldn't yet see clearly. 8 days remained of their agreement, but Eliza suspected her decision had already been made somewhere between firing a rifle to protect a man she barely knew and standing in moonlight holding his hand. The woman who'd planned to run had discovered something worth staying for, not just a place or a person, but a version of herself she'd never known existed. The frontier had a way of stripping away pretense, revealing who people really were beneath social conventions and careful manners. And what Eliza was discovering about herself, her courage, her capacity for loyalty, her hunger for genuine connection, surprised her more than anything else. Tomorrow would bring its challenges. But tonight, she lay in bed listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch, feeling for the first time in her life that she might actually be home. The 7th day brought unexpected visitors with the morning sun. Eliza was collecting eggs, having finally reached an understanding with Agnes, which mostly involved bribing the temperamental hen with extra corn, when she heard horses approaching. Not the thunder of raiders this time, but the measured pace of travelers. She emerged from the chicken coop to find 2 women dismounting near the house, their riding clothes fine but practical. Samuel was already greeting them, and his smile was genuine in a way that eased her automatic wariness. "Eliza," he called, "come meet our neighbors. This is Catherine Stevenson and her daughter Anne." Catherine Stevenson was perhaps 45, with silver threading through dark hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Anne looked to be near Eliza's age, pretty in a sun-kissed way that spoke of a life lived outdoors despite her mother's obvious attempts at maintaining propriety. "So you're the brave woman who faced down Vince Dalton," Catherine said, extending her hand. "The whole valley's talking about it." "Greatly exaggerated, I'm sure," Eliza replied, shaking hands and noting the calluses that marked Catherine as more than just a rancher's ornamental wife. "I doubt that," Anne said with a grin. "Tom Bennett was in town yesterday, telling everyone how you dragged him to safety while bullets were flying. He's quite smitten, actually." "Tom's young enough to be smitten with anything in skirts," Samuel said dryly, but Eliza caught something else in his tone. Was that jealousy? Catherine studied Eliza with frank interest. "We've been neighbors with Samuel for 7 years, and this is the first time since Mary." "Mother," Anne warned gently. "It's all right," Samuel said. "Catherine and Robert were good friends to Mary. They have a right to their curiosity. And our concern," Catherine added, "Dalton's been pressuring Robert too. Something about forming a water association that would essentially give him control over the whole valley's water rights." Samuel's expression darkened. "He mentioned nothing about that to me. Because you're his biggest obstacle. Without Hayes Ranch, he can strong-arm the smaller spreads into compliance." Catherine's voice carried the steel of someone who'd fought her own battles. "Robert wanted me to feel you out about forming our own association, a defensive alliance, really. I'm interested. When?" "Tonight, if possible. Robert's calling a meeting at our place. Every rancher in the valley except Dalton and his cronies." After the women left, promising to see them that evening, Eliza found Samuel staring thoughtfully at the mountains. "You're worried," she observed. "Dalton's moving faster than I expected. This water association scheme, it's clever. Legal on the surface, but theft underneath. Then we stop him. He turned to her, and she realized her unconscious use of we. This isn't your fight, remember? You could stay here tonight, safe, while I go to the meeting. We've had this discussion. I'm going with you. Eliza, unless you're saying I'm not welcome at the meeting, that this is men's business only, you know that's not what I meant. Then it's settled. She started toward the house, then paused. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't punch anyone else. Your hand is still swollen from yesterday. That evening, the Stevenson Ranch proved to be even larger than Hayes Ranch, with a grand house that wouldn't have looked out of place in Boston's better neighborhoods. Robert Stevenson was a bear of a man with a booming laugh, but his eyes were shrewd as he welcomed them into a parlor already crowded with other ranchers. Glad you could make it, Sam. And this must be the famous Miss Morgan. Robert's handshake was firm but careful, as if he was aware of his strength. My wife tells me you've got spine. Good. We'll need all the spine we can get. The meeting was revealing. Dalton had approached each smaller rancher individually, using different tactics, promises of prosperity for some, veiled threats for others. But the pattern was clear. He wanted control of the valley's water, and he was willing to do whatever it took to get it. The judge arrives in a week, Peterson said, tobacco juice making his words slightly mushy. Dalton's got deep pockets. Wouldn't surprise me if money's already changed hands. You're saying the law won't help us? This from James Murphy, whose small ranch bordered Dalton's spread. I'm saying we can't count on it, Robert replied. We need to be prepared for other options. The room fell silent at the implication. Eliza felt the tension ratcheting up, these law-abiding men confronting the possibility that law might not be enough. There's another problem, a younger rancher named Davis said reluctantly. Dalton's been hiring men. Guns from Texas. Heard tell. Professional types, if you catch my meaning. Hired killers, Samuel said flatly. How many? Maybe a dozen so far. Could be more coming. The odds were getting worse. Eliza counted the men in the room, 15 ranchers, most with a handful of hands each. But ranch hands weren't gunfighters. We could hire our own guns, someone suggested. With what money? Peterson countered. We're land rich but cash poor, all of us. Dalton's got capital from God knows where. From rustling cattle across the border, Jake said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. Sorry, boss, but it's time to say it plain. Before Dalton bought the Triple Bar, he was running stolen beef into Mexico. Everyone knows it, even if it can't be proved. That's a serious accusation, Robert said carefully. It's the truth, Catherine interjected. My cousin in El Paso recognized him. He goes by Dalton here, but down there he was Vincent Marsh, wanted in 3 states. This changed everything. If they could prove Dalton's past. Won't matter, Samuel said, reading Eliza's thoughts. He's bought respectability here. Without proof. Then we get proof, Eliza said. Everyone turned to stare at her, and she felt heat rise to her cheeks, but continued. If he's got a past, there must be records, wanted posters, something. Little lady's got a point, Peterson said, though finding such things would be dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous, she countered, but doing nothing is more dangerous still. The meeting continued for another hour, plans forming and reforming. By the time they left, an alliance had been forged, tentative but real. The ranchers would stand together, pool resources, and share information. On the ride home, Samuel was quiet until they were halfway back to Hayes Ranch. You impressed them, he said finally. Not easy to do with that crowd. I stated the obvious. Sometimes the obvious needs stating. And your idea about finding proof of Dalton's past, it's good, but I won't have you putting yourself at risk to get it. You won't have me. She raised an eyebrow. Careful, Mr. Hayes. That sounds dangerously like you think you have authority over me. Even in the darkness, she could see his smile. Poor choice of words. I meant I would strongly prefer you not risk yourself. Better. And I strongly prefer you stop trying to protect me from everything. I'm not made of glass, Samuel. No, he agreed softly. You're made of something much stronger. They were approaching the ranch when Jake rode out to meet them, his expression grim even in the moonlight. "Boss, we've got trouble. Will's missing." "What do you mean missing?" Samuel demanded, immediately alert. "He went to check the north pasture this afternoon, never came back. Tom and I went looking, found his horse wandering loose, blood on the saddle." Samuel cursed viciously. "Dalton. That's what we figure. Question is, what's he planning?" They found a note nailed to the barn door, the message brief and chilling. "Hayes, you've got something I want. I've got something you want. Let's trade. Come alone to Baker's Creek at dawn. Bring the woman." Eliza felt ice in her veins. "He wants me? Wants me?" "He wants to hurt me," Samuel corrected, his voice deadly quiet. "And he thinks taking you will do it." "Or he wants the water rights deed," Jake suggested. "Use Will and Miss Eliza as leverage." "Either way, I'm not—" Samuel began. "You're not going alone," Eliza interrupted. "The note says bring me, so bring me." "Absolutely not." "Samuel, think. If you show up without me, what happens to Will? Dalton's already proven he'll escalate violence. And if I bring you? You think he'll just let Will go and wave goodbye?" "No, but at least we'll know what we're dealing with." She took the note, studying it. "He's getting desperate. This isn't calculated like the barn fire or the false accusations. This is rash." "Desperate men do stupid things," Cookie said, having joined them. "Stupid and dangerous." "Then we'd better be smart," Eliza replied. She looked at Samuel. "We go, but not alone. The others stay hidden, wait for the right moment. It's too risky." "Everything's risky now, but Will's life is at stake." Samuel struggled visibly with the decision. Finally, he nodded tightly. "We go. But you stay behind me at all times, and if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments." "Agreed." They spent the night planning. Jake would position himself in the rocks above Baker's Creek. Tom and Ben would circle around from the east. Cookie would stay at the ranch with the rifle, watching the road in case it was a diversion. Eliza didn't sleep. She sat by her window watching the stars wheel across the vast Wyoming sky, thinking about the strange turns her life had taken. A week ago, she'd been ready to run from this place. Now she was preparing to ride into danger for people who'd been strangers just days before. As dawn approached, painting the eastern sky pale pink, she dressed in her riding clothes, practical pants she'd borrowed from Tom, much to everyone's scandal and secret approval. If she was going to face danger, she'd do it dressed for action, not tripping over skirts. Samuel was already saddled up when she emerged. He looked at her outfit, a slight smile tugging at his lips despite the circumstances. "Those look better on you than Tom," he said. "Everything looks better on me than Tom," she replied, trying for lightness. He reached out suddenly, cupping her face in his calloused hand. "Eliza, if something happens, nothing will happen. We're going to get Will back, deal with Dalton, and be home in time for Cookie's breakfast. But if—" She silenced him by pressing her fingers to his lips, as she had that night by the barn. "After. Tell me everything after, when this is over and we're safe." They rode out as the sun crested the mountains, two figures against the vast landscape. Eliza could feel the weight of hidden eyes, their own men watching, ready. Perhaps Dalton's too. Baker's Creek ran through a narrow canyon, the walls providing perfect cover for an ambush. As they approached, Eliza's every nerve screamed danger. Samuel must have felt it too because his hand drifted to his gun. "Easy," she murmured. "Not yet." Dalton was waiting at the creek's widest point, where the water pooled before rushing on. He had 6 men with him, all armed, all watching with predatory attention. Will was there too, hands tied, a dark bruise spreading across his jaw. "Right on time," Dalton called out. "Though I said alone, Hayes." "You said bring the woman. She's here." Dalton's gaze shifted to Eliza, and she forced herself not to flinch from the hunger in it. "Indeed she is. Dressed like a man, but still beautiful. You always did have good taste, first Mary, now this one." "Don't speak my wife's name," Samuel said quietly, dangerously. "Which wife? The dead one or the mail-order one? Oh wait, you haven't actually married this one yet, have you? Just keeping her around for convenience?" Eliza dismounted before Samuel could respond. "What do you want, Dalton?" Direct, I like that. He gestured to one of his men who produced a document. Simple transaction. Hayes signs over his water rights to the New Valley Water Association, which I happen to control, and everyone goes home happy. That's theft, Samuel said. That's business. Sign or things get unpleasant. They're already unpleasant, Eliza observed. You smell like a whiskey barrel rolled through a pigsty. One of Dalton's men snickered, then quickly silenced himself at Dalton's glare. Funny. Let's see how funny you are when… Dalton drew his gun, pointing it at Will. Sign, Hayes. Now. I'll sign, Samuel said, dismounting slowly. Just let Will go first. No. You sign, then I let him go. As Samuel approached, Eliza noticed movement in the rocks above. Jake was in position. She caught Will's eye, trying to convey readiness. The young man, despite his situation, gave the slightest nod. Samuel took the document, reading it slowly. This gives you everything. Not just water rights, but mineral rights, grazing rights. I'm not a patient man, Hayes. Samuel looked up at Dalton, and Eliza saw something shift in his expression. You're right. You're not patient. That's why you're going to lose. What? A patient man would have noticed that Will's been working his hands free for the past 10 minutes. A patient man would have checked those rocks for snipers. A patient man would have realized that Miss Morgan isn't just standing there. She's holding a derringer under that coat. Dalton's eyes widened, darting between them. In that moment of distraction, everything exploded into action. Will, hands now free, rolled sideways. Jake's rifle cracked from above, taking down one of Dalton's men. Samuel lunged for Dalton while Eliza drew the small gun Samuel had given her that morning, firing at the man nearest to Will. The canyon erupted in gunfire. Tom and Ben charged in from the east, catching Dalton's men in crossfire. Eliza found herself pressed against a boulder, Samuel shielding her with his body as bullets whined overhead. I told you to run, he shouted over the noise. You told me to run if you said so. You haven't said so yet. Despite everything, he laughed. God, you're impossible. The fight was brief but vicious. Dalton's men, caught off guard and outnumbered now, began to retreat. But Dalton himself, blood streaming from a gash where Samuel's fist had connected, managed to grab Eliza as she shifted position. Nobody move, he screamed, pressing his gun to her temple. I'll kill her. Everything stopped. Samuel stood frozen, his own gun half raised. Jake held position above. Even the wind seemed to pause. You're going to let me leave, Dalton said, backing toward his horse while keeping Eliza as a shield. Nice and easy, or she dies. Eliza met Samuel's eyes, seeing agony there. She thought of all the things she hadn't said, all the moments they wouldn't have. Then she thought of something else. The move her father had taught her in one of his paranoid episodes, convinced the world was out to get them. Samuel, she said clearly, remember what I said about my father's lessons? Understanding flickered in his eyes. I remember. Good. She went completely limp, dropping like dead weight. Dalton, not expecting it, lost his grip for a crucial second. The gun swung away from her head. Samuel's shot was perfect, catching Dalton in the shoulder, spinning him around. Jake's shot followed, taking the gun from Dalton's hand. The would-be cattle baron fell to his knees, clutching his wounds, screaming curses. Eliza scrambled to her feet and into Samuel's arms. He held her so tightly she could barely breathe, his whole body shaking. Don't ever, he said against her hair, ever do that again. Don't ever let someone take me hostage again, she countered, her own voice unsteady. Sheriff Collins arrived an hour later with a posse, drawn by reports of gunfire. He surveyed the scene, Dalton and 2 of his men wounded, 1 dead, the others fled or captured. Self-defense? He asked Samuel. Kidnapping, Samuel replied, showing him the note. He took Will, tried to force me to sign over my rights. Collins studied the document Dalton had brought, whistling low. This would have given him the whole valley. Judge Waters needs to see this. As they loaded Dalton onto a wagon, he managed one last threat. This isn't over, Hayes. I've got friends, resources. You've got a date with the territorial judge, Collins interrupted. And something tells me he'll be very interested in why you're using an assumed name, Mr. Vincent Marsh. Dalton's face went white. How did you— Anonymous tip, Colin said, winking at Eliza. Funny how those happen sometimes. As the sheriff's wagon rolled away with Dalton, Eliza realized she'd been holding her breath. It was over. The immediate threat at least was gone. Back at the ranch, Cookie had prepared a feast. Word spread quickly, and soon the house was full of neighbors coming to congratulate them and confirm the news. The Stevensons arrived with cake, the Murphys brought whiskey, and even old Peterson showed up with his fiddle. "You've got to tell it again," Ann Stevenson pleaded, eyes shining with excitement. "The part where you dropped like you'd fainted, that was brilliant." "It was terrifying," Samuel corrected, his hand finding Eliza's under the table. "I thought—" He stopped, jaw tightening. "But it worked," Robert Stevenson said, raising his glass. "To clever women and the men smart enough to appreciate them." The impromptu celebration lasted into the evening. Eliza found herself swept into the community's embrace, no longer the stranger or the mail-order bride, but one of them, someone who'd stood and fought when it mattered. As the last wagon rolled away and quiet settled over the ranch, Eliza stood once again on the porch, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Samuel joined her, as she'd known he would. 7 days, he said quietly. "What? You've been here 7 days. Our agreement was for 14. She turned to look at him. "Are you asking me to leave?" "God, no." The vehemence in his voice made her heart skip. "I'm saying you've got 7 more days to decide. But Eliza, after today, I know what kind of man you are," she interrupted. "Brave, honorable, willing to risk everything for the people you care about. And I know what kind of woman you are. Courageous, clever, loyal beyond reason." "Is that what we are? Reasonable?" He stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "There's nothing reasonable about what I feel for you." "Samuel." 7 more days, he said. "I'll wait 7 more days. But know this, I want you to stay. Not as a mail-order bride, not as an arrangement or a business deal. I want you to stay as my wife, my partner, my equal in everything. And if I said yes right now, I'd say you were still running on fear and adrenaline from today. I want you clear-headed when you decide you deserve that. We both do." She rose on her toes and kissed his cheek, feeling him tense at the contact. 7 days, then. As she walked to her room, Eliza knew her decision was already made. Had been made somewhere between dropping like a stone to save them both and feeling his arms around her after. But Samuel was right. They deserved certainty, not impulse. 7 more days to explore what they could build together. 7 days to learn each other without the shadow of Dalton's threat. 7 days to transform from strangers bound by letters into something real and lasting. The woman who'd arrived planning to run had found something worth staying for. More than that, she'd found herself. The courage had always been there, waiting. The loyalty, the fierce protectiveness, the capacity for love, all dormant until this place and these people had awakened them. Through her window, she could see Samuel checking the horses one last time, always taking care of others. Jake was with him, the 2 men talking quietly, occasionally laughing. Cookie's light still burned in the kitchen, probably preparing tomorrow's bread. Will, bandaged but mobile, was sitting on the bunkhouse steps with Tom and Ben, their voices carrying on the night air. This was family. Not bound by blood, but by choice, by shared danger and mutual trust. And somehow, impossibly, it had become her family too. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be legal proceedings against Dalton, the ranch to fully rebuild, relationships to navigate. But tonight, for the first time in her life, Eliza Morgan fell asleep without fear, without escape plans, without counting days until she could run. She was home. The 8th day dawned clear and bright, with the kind of crystalline sky that made the mountains look close enough to touch. Eliza woke to find a package on her doorstep, a wrapped box with a note in Samuel's careful handwriting, for the woman who faced down outlaws in borrowed pants. S. Inside was a split riding skirt, practical but well made, in deep brown leather that would wear well. Underneath was a second note. "Catherine Stevenson helped me order this from Denver weeks ago. I was hoping you'd stay long enough to need it." She was examining the skirt when Cookie appeared with coffee and news. Boss wants you to know we're heading to the north pasture today, bringing the herd closer before winter sets in. Winter? It's barely September. Cookie laughed. This is Wyoming, miss. Winter comes when it pleases, not when the calendar says. Could snow next week or not for 2 months. Best to be ready. She found Samuel saddling horses, his movements efficient despite his still healing ribs. He looked up as she approached in her new riding skirt. It fits, he said, appreciation clear in his eyes. It's perfect. Thank you. Though I'm curious when you ordered it. After your second letter, you mentioned wanting to see the mountains on horseback. I hoped. He shrugged, almost shy. Presumptuous, I know. Optimistic, she corrected. I like that about you. They spent the day moving cattle, Eliza learning to help guide the herd, while Jake called out instructions that were half teaching, half teasing. She discovered muscles she didn't know existed, ate dust until she could taste nothing else, and loved every minute of it. You're a natural, Will said, riding up beside her. His face was still bruised from his ordeal, but his spirit seemed undamaged. Most people take weeks to get the hang of herding. I had good teachers, she replied, watching Samuel and Jake work in perfect synchronization, anticipating the cattle's movements and each other's actions. As the sun reached its zenith, they stopped by a stream to water the horses and eat the lunch Cookie had packed. Eliza sat on a boulder, watching the men joke and share food, when Ann Stevenson arrived with her father. Thought you might like some company, Ann said, settling beside her. Also, I wanted to see if the stories were true. What stories? That Samuel Hayes is smiling again, that his mail-order bride turned out to be Annie Oakley in disguise, that there's going to be a wedding before the month is out. Anne, Robert Stevenson warned, but he was grinning. There's no wedding planned, Eliza said carefully. Yet, Anne added with a knowing look. But anyone with eyes can see how you two look at each other. Before Eliza could respond, a rider appeared on the horizon, moving fast. As he drew closer, she recognized one of Sheriff Collins's deputies. Mr. Hayes, the deputy called, reining in his lathered horse. Sheriff needs you in town, both you and Miss Morgan. It's about Dalton. The jail was crowded when they arrived. Judge Waters had come early, drawn by reports of the attempted kidnapping and the revelation of Dalton's true identity. The judge was a stern-looking man with silver hair and penetrating eyes that seemed to measure everything twice. Miss Morgan, he said after introductions, I'll need your testimony about the events at Baker's Creek. For the next hour, Eliza recounted the kidnapping, the ambush, the attempt to force Samuel's signature. She kept her voice steady, factual, even when describing the gun pressed to her temple. And you're willing to swear to this in court? The judge asked. I am. Good. He turned to Sheriff Collins. I've received some interesting telegrams about Mr. Vincent Marsh, alias Vince Dalton. Seems Texas and New Mexico both want him for rustling and murder. So he'll hang, Jake asked bluntly. Most likely, but first he'll stand trial here for kidnapping and attempted murder. The judge looked at Samuel. He's asked to speak with you. Against my advice, but it's his right. They found Dalton in his cell looking smaller somehow, without his guns and swagger. His shoulder was bandaged, his face pale from blood loss. Come to gloat? He asked Samuel. Come to hear what you have to say. Dalton laughed bitterly. You want to know why? Why I pushed so hard? He looked at Eliza. You wouldn't understand. Either of you. You've got something I never had. People who give a damn if you live or die. You had men following you, Samuel pointed out, hired guns. Soon as the money dried up, they scattered like coyotes. Dalton shifted, wincing. You know what it's like, Hayes, having nothing? Being nothing? I know what it's like to build something from nothing, Samuel replied. The difference is I didn't try to steal what others built. Easy to be righteous when you've got luck on your side. You had Jake, Cookie, your precious Mary. What did I have? Choices, Eliza said quietly. You had choices, same as everyone. You chose to be what you are. Dalton stared at her for a long moment. The mail-order bride with opinions. You think you're better than me? I think I'm trying to be better than I was yesterday. That's all any of us can do. As they left the jail, Samuel was quiet. Finally, as they reached the wagon, he said, "You pitied him." "I recognized him," she corrected. "The anger, the belief that the world owes you something, I've felt that. The difference is, I didn't let it consume me." "What stopped you?" She looked at him. "I answered a letter from a rancher in Wyoming. The ride back was peaceful, the crisis with Dalton creating a strange calm in its wake. As they crested the hill above the ranch, Eliza saw riders approaching, the Stevensons, Murphys, Petersons, and others. "What's this about?" Samuel wondered. They soon found out. The neighbors had organized a barn raising, bringing lumber and supplies to finish what Dalton's fire had started. "Figured you'd helped us enough times," Peterson said around his ever-present tobacco. "Time we returned the favor properly." For the next 3 days, the ranch buzzed with activity. The men worked on the barn while the women organized meals, mended clothes, and shared gossip. Eliza found herself at the center of it all, no longer an outsider, but an integral part of the community's fabric. "You've changed things," Catherine Stevenson told her as they worked side by side preparing supper for the workers. Samuel was dying inside, slowly, quietly. The whole valley could see it but didn't know how to help. "I didn't do anything special." "You did everything special. You stood beside him instead of behind him. You fought with him instead of waiting for rescue. You showed him that partnership doesn't diminish a man. It doubles his strength." On the 10th night, with the barn nearly complete, Peterson brought out his fiddle again. Others had brought instruments, a guitar, a harmonica, even a washboard. Music filled the night air, and couples began dancing on the packed earth. "Dance with me," Samuel said, appearing at Eliza's elbow. "I don't know these dances." "Neither do I. We'll figure it out together." They moved awkwardly at first, stepping on each other's feet, laughing at their mistakes. But gradually, they found a rhythm, their bodies learning each other's movements, anticipating and responding. "4 more days," he murmured in her ear. "Still counting?" "Always. But now I'm counting differently. Not days until you might leave, but days until I can ask you properly to stay forever." "And if I can't wait 4 more days?" He pulled back to look at her. "Eliza?" "I'm saying that sometimes agreements need to be modified based on changed circumstances." "What circumstances have changed?" She smiled up at him. "I've fallen in love with you, Samuel Hayes. Completely, irrevocably in love. I don't need 4 more days to know that." He stopped dancing, his hands framing her face. "Say that again." "I love you. Eliza Morgan, I've loved you since your 3rd letter, when you wrote about watching thunderstorms and wondering if they felt as wild and free as they looked. I loved you before I saw your face, and I've loved you more every day since." "Then why are we waiting?" "Because you deserve—" She silenced him with a kiss. Their first real kiss, there in front of everyone. When they finally parted, the yard had gone silent, everyone watching. Then Jake whooped, Cookie cheered, and the whole gathering erupted in celebration. "Is that a yes?" Samuel asked, dazed. "That's a yes to everything, to marriage, to partnership, to building a life together in this impossible, beautiful place." Judge Waters, who'd stayed for the barn raising, stepped forward with a grin. "I could perform the ceremony right now if you'd like. Save you a trip to town." Samuel looked at Eliza questioningly. She thought of the elaborate wedding she'd once imagined as a girl, all lace and flowers and formality. Then she looked around at these people who'd become family, at the barn they'd built together, at the man she loved standing in front of her with his heart in his eyes. "Yes," she said, "right now, just like this." What followed was the most unconventional wedding the valley had ever seen. Eliza in her work dress, Samuel in his dusty ranch clothes, surrounded by neighbors who'd become family. Ann Stevenson wove wildflowers into a crown for Eliza's hair. Cookie produced rings, simple bands he'd been crafting in secret from silver dollars. "I knew this day was coming," he said gruffly, wiping his eyes. Judge Waters performed the ceremony by lantern light, his words simple but profound about partnership, courage, and the choice to build something together despite the odds. "Elizabeth Morgan," Samuel said when prompted, his voice strong and clear, "I promise to stand beside you through drought and plenty, through danger and peace. I promise to respect your strength, support your dreams, and never take for granted the gift of your choosing me. I promise to love you with everything I have, everything I am, for all the days of my life." "Samuel Hayes," Eliza replied, her voice equally steady. "I promise to face whatever comes with you, to build and rebuild as many times as necessary. I promise to be your partner in all things, your comfort in sorrow, your joy in celebration. I promise to choose you every day, to love you freely and fiercely for all the days of my life." "Then by the authority vested in me by the territory of Wyoming," Judge Waters declared, "I pronounce you husband and wife." This kiss was different from their first, deeper, fuller, a promise sealed. Around them, their friends cheered. Peterson's fiddle struck up a celebration tune, and the party that followed lasted until dawn. Late that night, or rather early the next morning, Eliza stood with Samuel looking at their ranch, truly theirs now. The new barn stood proud against the sky, the house glowed with warmth, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its mate. "No more counting days," Samuel said, his arms around her. "No more counting," she agreed, "just living them. Do you regret not running that first day? Every choice I made led me here, to this moment, to you. How could I regret that?" He turned her to face him. "Mrs. Hayes, have I told you today that I love you?" "Several times, Mr. Hayes, but I never tire of hearing it. As the sun rose over the mountains, painting the world in shades of gold and possibility, Eliza thought about the journey that had brought her here. The desperate woman who'd boarded a stagecoach in Boston was gone, replaced by someone stronger, braver, more fully herself than she'd ever imagined possible. The morning after their impromptu wedding found Eliza waking in the bedroom that was now truly hers. Theirs. Samuel had already risen, his side of the bed cool to the touch, but she could hear his voice through the window, giving the day's instructions to the hands. She smiled, stretching luxuriously. Her husband, the word still felt foreign on her tongue, was a man of habits, and she was learning them one by one. She dressed quickly and found Cookie in the kitchen, humming while he worked. He looked up with a grin that crinkled his entire face. "Morning, Mrs. Hayes. Got your breakfast keeping warm. Boss said to let you sleep, but I figured you'd be up soon enough. You're not the type to laze about." "You figured right." She accepted the plate gratefully. "Cookie, can I ask you something?" "Shoot. What was Mary like?" "Really like, not just the polite version people tell." Cookie's expression softened. "Mary was gentle, like a spring rain, all quiet nourishment. She brought beauty to this place, planted flowers, hung curtains, tried to civilize us heathens. But she was fragile too. This land was hard on her, harder than she let on. And Samuel loved her. Deeply. But," Cookie hesitated, then continued, "it was a protective love, if you understand me. He was always careful with her, like she might break. With you, it's different." "Different how?" "He's not protecting you from the world. He's facing it with you. That's a stronger kind of love, if you ask me. The kind that builds kingdoms out of wilderness." Before Eliza could respond, hoofbeats announced visitors. Through the window, she saw Sheriff Collins approaching with two men she didn't recognize, one elderly and distinguished, the other younger, with the soft look of someone unused to physical labor. Samuel met them in the yard, and she could see tension in his shoulders. She grabbed her shawl and joined them, noting how Samuel's expression relaxed slightly when she appeared at his side. "Mrs. Hayes," Sheriff Collins said, touching his hat, "this is Mr. Josiah Hartley from Denver, and his associate Mr. Barnes. They're here about a delicate matter." Hartley stepped forward, his manner apologetic but determined. "Mrs. Hayes, or should I say Miss Morgan, I represent your uncle, Theodore Morgan of Boston." Eliza felt the blood drain from her face. Beside her, Samuel stepped closer, his presence solid and reassuring. "I don't have an uncle anymore," she said steadily. "Whatever he wants you to return to Boston," Barnes interrupted, pulling out a document. "He states that you're his legal ward, that you left without permission, and that this marriage is invalid as it was conducted without his consent." "I'm 23 years old," Eliza replied, "well past the age of needing anyone's consent." "Perhaps, But there's the matter of certain items that went missing when you left. Jewelry that belonged to your late mother, some cash from the household funds. Your uncle is prepared to press charges for theft unless you return. The accusation hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. Eliza felt shame burn through her, even as anger rose to meet it. "Those items were my mother's, left to me," she said, "and the money was owed to me for 3 years of unpaid work as his household's governess, nurse, and general servant." "That's not how Mr. Morgan sees it," Hartley said, though his tone suggested he found the whole matter distasteful. "However, he's prepared to be reasonable. Return to Boston, annul this marriage, and all will be forgiven." "No." The word came from Samuel, flat and final. Barnes sneered. "I don't believe we were addressing you, Mr. Hayes. Samuel Hayes, her husband, and you're on my land threatening my wife. I suggest you reconsider your approach." Hartley held up a placating hand. "No one's threatening anyone. We're simply conveying Mr. Morgan's position. The law in Wyoming territory recognizes our marriage as valid," Sheriff Collins interrupted. "And as for theft charges, they'd have to be filed here, where the alleged criminal resides. I doubt any jury of ranchers would convict a woman for taking her own mother's jewelry." "There are other ways to pursue this," Barnes said coldly. "Mr. Morgan has connections, influence, and I have a rifle," Jake said pleasantly, having appeared with Tom and Will, all armed. "Amazing how influence fades when faced with Wyoming hospitality." Hartley sighed. "Mr. Hayes, might we speak privately, man to man? Whatever you have to say can be said in front of my wife." "Very well." Hartley reached into his coat, and everyone tensed, but he only withdrew an envelope. "Mr. Morgan authorized me to make an offer, $10,000 for the annulment and her return." The sum was staggering. Eliza heard Tom whistle low. That was more money than most ranchers saw in a lifetime. "20,000, Barnes added when Samuel didn't immediately respond. "Mr. Morgan is very concerned about his niece's welfare." "Concerned?" Eliza laughed bitterly. "Is that what we're calling it?" Samuel looked at the men with contempt so cold it could have frozen water. "Gentlemen, let me be clear, there is no amount of money that would induce me to send my wife back to a man who apparently sees her as property to be bought and sold. She is not for sale. Our marriage is not for sale. And if Theodore Morgan wants to pursue this further, he's welcome to come to Wyoming himself and discuss it." "He won't find a warm reception," Eliza added. "The last man who tried to force me into something I didn't want is currently awaiting trial for kidnapping and attempted murder. Wyoming doesn't take kindly to bullies, no matter how well dressed." Hartley studied them both, then nodded slowly. "I'll convey your response to Mr. Morgan." He looked at Eliza with something that might have been respect. "For what it's worth, madam, I think you've chosen well." As the men prepared to leave, Barnes couldn't resist a final barb. "You'll regret this. Both of you. Theodore Morgan doesn't forget slights." "Neither do I," Samuel replied, "and I have a very clear memory of every threat made against my wife." After they left, Eliza found herself shaking. Samuel pulled her into his arms, holding her while reaction set in. $20,000, she whispered. "Samuel, that money could what? Buy me a wife who doesn't love me? Purchase a life built on sending you back to misery? There's not enough money in the world for that. But the ranch, the rebuilding, will happen with or without blood money." He pulled back to look at her. "Eliza, do you trust me?" "Completely." "Then trust that I'd rather live in a tent with you than a mansion without you. Money comes and goes. What we have is irreplaceable." She kissed him then, pouring all her gratitude and love into the contact. When they parted, Jake cleared his throat. "Not to interrupt, but we've got another problem. Riders coming from the north. Looks like the Brennan Gang." The Brennan Gang was known throughout the territory. Cattle thieves who struck fast and disappeared into the Badlands. If they were here, it meant trouble. "How many?" Samuel asked, already moving toward his rifle. "Maybe 8. They're heading for the north pasture where we moved the herd." They've been watching us, Samuel realized, waiting until we were distracted with Dalton to make their move. Within minutes, the ranch was mobilized. But as they prepared to ride out, Samuel turned to Eliza. "Stay here. Please, this is different from Dalton. These men are killers. So was Dalton. Dalton was a bully with pretensions. The Brennans are professionals. I need to know you're safe. She wanted to argue, but something in his eyes stopped her. This wasn't about protecting the weak woman. This was about him needing to focus without fearing for her. All right, but Cookie and I will ford up here in case they circle back. Good thinking. As the men rode out, Eliza and Cookie prepared the house for defense. They had barely finished when she spotted dust on the southern road. More riders, but these wore badges, a U.S. Marshal and his deputies. Mrs. Hayes? The Marshal was a weathered man with keen eyes. I'm Marshal Garrett. We've been tracking the Brennan gang for 2 weeks. Word is they might hit your ranch. My husband and the men just rode north after them. Then we'd better hurry. He turned to his deputies. Let's ride. Cookie wanted Eliza to stay put, but she was already saddling her horse. Don't argue, Cookie. I'm going. She caught up with the Marshal's group quickly, her superior knowledge of the land letting her guide them along a shortcut. They heard the gunfire before they saw anything, the sharp crack of rifles echoing across the valley. The scene they found was chaos. The Brennan gang had the herd scattered, and Samuel's men were pinned down behind rocks, outnumbered and outgunned. But the arrival of the Marshal's force changed everything. U.S. Marshals, Garrett bellowed, throw down your weapons. The Brennans, caught between two forces, tried to flee. In the melee that followed, Eliza saw Samuel's horse go down, throwing him hard. Without thinking, she spurred her horse forward, riding low against its neck as bullets whined past. She reached Samuel as he struggled to his feet, clearly dazed from the fall. One of the Brennans was bearing down on them, gun raised. Eliza drew the rifle from her saddle scabbard and fired in one smooth motion. The outlaw tumbled from his horse. I thought you agreed to stay at the house, Samuel gasped, blood running from a cut on his forehead. I agreed to let you ride out without me. I said nothing about staying put when Marshals arrived. She helped him up behind her on the horse. Hold on. They made it to cover as the fight intensified. But with the Marshals' experience and numbers, it was soon over. 5 of the Brennans were captured, 2 dead, 1 escaped into the Badlands. That was some shooting, ma'am, Marshal Garrett said afterward, surveying the scene. You saved your husband's life. She has a habit of that, Samuel said, his arm around her waist as Cookie tended his head wound. Can't seem to stop her. Don't want to stop her, Jake corrected. Woman's worth 10 men in a fight. As they herded the scattered cattle back together, Marshal Garrett approached Samuel privately, though Eliza stayed close enough to hear. Mr. Hayes, I heard about your trouble with Dalton and now the Brennans. Seems like someone's painting a target on your back. Any idea who? Well, it's interesting. We intercepted a telegram in Denver. Someone's been offering good money for anyone who makes trouble for Hayes Ranch. 3 guesses who sent it. Theodore Morgan, Eliza said, stepping into the conversation. Got it in one, ma'am. Can't prove it yet, but where there's smoke. There's usually an uncle who can't accept rejection, Samuel finished grimly. That evening, as they gathered for supper, the weight of the day's events settled over everyone. 2 attacks in one day, both potentially connected to Eliza's past. It was almost too much to process. Maybe I should, Eliza began, but Samuel cut her off. Don't even say it. Whatever you're thinking about leaving or protecting us, don't. But if my uncle is going to keep, then we'll keep fighting back, Jake interrupted. Hell, pardon my language, ma'am, but this is the most excitement we've had in years. Besides, Cookie added, bringing in fresh bread, you think we'd let you face that bastard? Sorry, that man, alone? You're one of us now. That means your fights are our fights, even if those fights keep coming. Especially then, Will said firmly. You stood for us against Dalton. We stand for you against anyone. Tom nodded vigorously. Plus, you saved the boss's life today. That makes you a hero in my book. I'm no hero. I just reacted. That's what heroes do, Samuel said softly. They react when others freeze. They run toward danger when others run away. They choose to stand and fight when they could flee. That night, unable to sleep, Eliza found herself writing a letter by lamplight. Samuel stirred behind her. Who are you writing to? My uncle. He sat up, concerned. Eliza, I need to do this. He needs to understand that I'm not coming back, that I'm not afraid of him anymore. She showed him what she'd written. Uncle Theodore, your representatives have delivered your message and your threats. Let me be equally clear in my response. I am no longer the frightened girl who fled your house. I am a married woman, a rancher's wife, and a member of a community that protects its own. The jewelry was my mother's, left to me by right and love. The money was earned through 3 years of servitude you never acknowledged. But more than that, the life I've built here is mine by choice and courage. If you continue to send trouble our way, know that you're not just fighting me or my husband. You're fighting all of Wyoming territory, where people judge a person by their actions, not their bank accounts. I am free. I am loved. I am home. Do not contact me again. Eliza Hayes. It's perfect, Samuel said, kissing her shoulder, though he won't listen. Probably not, but I needed to say it, to put it in writing. I'm not running anymore. Not from him, not from anything. Good. Because I have plans for us, Mrs. Hayes. Plans that require you staying right here. What kind of plans? The kind that involve expanding the ranch, maybe building a school for the valley's children, raising a family of our own. He pulled her back against him. Think you could handle teaching again? The Stevensons mentioned their children need education, and others would follow. A school? The idea sparked something in her. Yes, I could do that. Would want to do that. Then we'll build one. Right here on our land, central to the valley. Our land, our future, our dreams. The words wrapped around her like a warm blanket. The next morning brought yet another surprise. A wagon train of immigrants passing through, seeking permission to water at their creek. Samuel granted it readily, and soon their yard was full of children chasing chickens while their parents refilled water barrels. One woman, heavily pregnant and exhausted, caught Eliza's attention. She brought the woman inside, offering food and rest. You're kind, the woman said in accented English. Not everyone is kind to immigrants. I'm an immigrant myself, of sorts, Eliza replied. From Boston to here might as well be from another country. The woman smiled. I am Anna, from Germany. My husband died on the trail. I don't know what to do now. Eliza looked at this woman, scared, alone, pregnant, and saw an echo of her own desperation just weeks ago. What did you do in Germany? I was seamstress, very good seamstress. Can you cook? Yes, of course. Eliza found Samuel talking with the wagon master. We need to hire help for the house, she said. With the school starting, I'll need assistance. He caught on immediately. You have someone in mind? Anna, the pregnant widow. She needs a place. We need help. Cookie could use assistance too, especially with the hands to feed. Then ask her, Anna cried when Eliza made the offer. You don't know me? Why trust me? Someone trusted me when I was a stranger. It's only right to pass that on. As the wagon train departed, Anna stayed, settling into the small room off the kitchen. Cookie grumbled about not needing help, then immediately began teaching her his recipes. You've got a soft heart, Samuel told Eliza that evening as they watched Anna helping Cookie with supper. I've got a practical heart. We need help. She needs a home. Everyone benefits. And when her baby comes? Then the valley will have one more resident, maybe the first of many you and I will bring into the world. He turned her to face him, hope bright in his eyes. Are you saying, not yet, but someday soon, I think. Days passed in a blur of activity. The school construction began, with every ranch contributing materials or labor. Anna proved invaluable, her neat stitches repairing clothes and her cooking complementing Cookie's heartier fare. The ranch thrived despite the earlier attacks, or perhaps because of them. Adversity had welded them into something stronger. Then came the morning when Sheriff Collins arrived with news that changed everything. Theodore Morgan is dead, he announced without preamble. Heart attack, the telegram says. 3 days ago in Boston. Eliza felt nothing at first, then a complex mix of relief and unexpected sadness. Not for the man who'd tried to own her, but for the uncle he could have been, the family they might have had. There's more, Collins continued. Seems he left no will, and you're his only living relative. According to this lawyer's message, you inherit everything. Everything? Samuel asked. The house in Boston, the business interests, about $40,000 in assets. Collins shook his head. You're a wealthy woman, Mrs. Hayes. Eliza looked at Samuel, seeing her own thoughts reflected in his eyes. We could do so much with that money, she said slowly. The school, helping other immigrants like Anna, improving the ranch. It's your inheritance. Your choice. No, it's ours. Everything is ours now. She turned to Collins. Tell the lawyer to sell it all, everything except my mother's jewelry if it can be recovered. We'll use the money to build something good here, something that helps people instead of controlling them. Collins grinned. I'll wire that today. Though you might want to go back to Boston to oversee No, I've no desire to see Boston again. My life is here. As Collins left, Eliza stood on the porch, looking out over the ranch that had become her world. In a few short weeks, she'd gone from desperate runaway to wealthy woman, but the transformation that mattered most had nothing to do with money. Regrets? Samuel asked, joining her. None. Well, one. What? I regret not coming here sooner. Think of all the time we missed. We have a lifetime ahead of us to make up for it. That afternoon, as if to test their newfound peace, one more challenge arose. The escaped Brennan gang member had been spotted nearby, possibly planning revenge for his captured brothers. The marshal had left deputies, but everyone remained on edge. It was Anna who spotted him first, her sharp eyes catching movement near the chicken coop where Agnes held court. Her scream brought everyone running. The outlaw had grabbed Anna, using her as a shield as he backed toward the horses. Nobody move! I'm taking a horse and leaving, and this woman's coming with me for insurance. Eliza felt rage course through her. Not Anna, not the pregnant widow they'd just taken in. Let her go, Samuel said calmly. Take the horse. No one will stop you. I don't believe you. Soon as I let her go, you'll shoot. Then take me instead, Eliza said, stepping forward. I'm a better hostage. I'm the owner's wife. Eliza, no, Samuel warned, but she kept walking forward slowly. Think about it. A pregnant woman will slow you down. I can ride, I can keep up. The outlaw considered, then shoved Anna away and grabbed for Eliza. But she was ready this time, having learned from Dalton. As his hand closed on her arm, she spun into him, driving her elbow into his solar plexus. He doubled over, gasping, and she brought her knee up into his face. He went down hard, and Jake was there with a rope before he could recover. Damn, woman, Jake said admiringly. Where'd you learn that? Boston's not as civilized as people think, she replied, helping Anna to her feet. Are you hurt? No, no. You saved me. Again, you save people. We save each other. That's what family does. The marshal's deputies took the outlaw away, the last of the Brennan threat removed. As calm settled over the ranch once more, Eliza realized that each challenge had only made them stronger, more united. That evening, they held a celebration of sorts. Not a party, but a quiet gathering of their extended family. Cookie made his special stew, Anna baked bread with herbs from her homeland, and Peterson brought his fiddle once more. You know, Catherine Stevenson said, having arrived with her family for dinner, when Samuel first said he was bringing in a mail-order bride, we all worried. Worried? Eliza asked. That he'd get someone fragile, someone who couldn't handle this life. Or worse, someone who'd try to change him into something he's not. Instead, Robert added, he got someone who makes him more himself than he's ever been. As the evening progressed, Eliza found herself standing apart for a moment, watching the scene. Samuel was laughing at something Jake had said. Cookie was teaching Anna a card game while she taught him German curses. The Stevenson children were playing with the barn cats. Tom and Will were arguing good-naturedly about who was the better shot. This was her family. Not the cold, proper household she'd known in Boston, but this warm, chaotic, chosen family built on mutual respect and shared struggles. Penny for your thoughts, Samuel said, appearing beside her. Just thinking about how much has changed. 3 weeks ago, I was alone on a stagecoach, planning to run. Now you're stuck with all of us. Happily stuck. She leaned into him. Samuel, do you remember what you wrote in your third letter? About wanting to build something that would last beyond ourselves. I remember. I think we're doing it. The school, helping Anna, standing against men like Dalton and the Brennans, we're building something good. We are. Together. As the gathering wound down and guests began departing, Eliza helped Anna clean up. The German woman had been quiet most of the evening, but now she spoke. Mrs. Hayes, I need to tell you something. What is it? Today, when that man grabbed me, I thought I would die. Die carrying my husband's child, never to see it born. But you didn't hesitate. You offered yourself for me. A stranger. You're not a stranger. You're family now. Anna's eyes filled with tears. In Germany, I had sister. She died of fever. You remind me of her, brave, kind, fierce when protecting others. Then we'll be sisters here, Eliza said, embracing her. Sisters by choice. Later, as the ranch settled into sleep, Eliza lay beside Samuel, listening to his steady breathing. Through the window she could see stars, countless, brilliant, free. 3 weeks ago, those stars had witnessed her desperation. Now they witnessed her contentment, but contentment didn't mean complacency. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the school to build, the ranch to run, perhaps more threats from those who envied what they'd built. But she would face them all with the same courage she'd discovered within herself, surrounded by people who'd become more than friends or neighbors. They'd become her tribe, her clan, her home. The first snow came early that year, dusting the mountains white while the valley still wore autumn gold. Eliza stood at the window of the newly finished schoolhouse, watching 6 children practice their letters on slate boards. The building smelled of fresh pine and possibility, its single room warm from the pot-bellied stove Samuel had installed just yesterday. Mrs. Hayes, little Mary Stevenson called out, is freedom spelled with 2 E's or 3? 2, Eliza replied, moving to help the girl. Freedom. Can you use it in a sentence? My pa says freedom is what makes America different from where Grandpa came from in Scotland. That's a fine sentence, Mary. Through the window, she could see Samuel working with Jake and the hands, preparing the ranch for winter. 3 months had passed since their wedding, and her inheritance from Uncle Theodore had transformed not just their ranch, but the entire valley. The school was only the beginning. They'd also established a fund to help new settlers, improved the road to town, and were planning a medical clinic for next spring. Anna appeared in the doorway, her pregnancy now showing prominently beneath her apron. Mrs. Hayes, riders coming. Looks like military. Eliza felt her stomach tighten. Military presence usually meant Indian troubles or worse. She dismissed the children early, sending them home with their lessons, and walked out to meet the soldiers. The captain was young, perhaps 30, with the bearing of someone who'd seen too much too soon. He touched his hat respectfully. Mrs. Hayes? I'm Captain Morrison. I'm looking for Samuel Hayes. He's my husband. Is there trouble? Not trouble, ma'am. An opportunity, perhaps. Might I speak with him? Samuel arrived quickly, having seen the military horses. After introductions, Captain Morrison got to business. Mr. Hayes, the Army is establishing a new supply route through this valley. We need a reliable source of beef and horses, someone we can contract with long term. Your ranch has been recommended. Recommended by whom? Samuel asked carefully. Marshal Garrett spoke highly of you, as did Judge Waters. Said you were honest, reliable, and had the capacity to deliver. What kind of numbers are we talking about? 50 head of cattle per month, plus any horses you can spare. The contract would be for 2 years initially, at premium prices. It was a fortune, enough to secure the ranch's future indefinitely. But Eliza saw Samuel's hesitation. There's something else, Samuel said. It wasn't a question. Morrison nodded. The Lakota have been moving through the area. There have been incidents. Accepting this contract means accepting military protection, but also potentially becoming a target. We're already targets, Jake pointed out, having joined them. Might as well get paid for it. That evening, they held a family council. Cookie, Jake, Anna, and the hands all gathered to discuss the opportunity. It's good money, Will said. Better than we'd see in 10 years of regular ranching. But it ties us to the military, Tom argued. Some folks won't like that. And the Indians? The Lakota were here first, Eliza said quietly. We're all immigrants on their land. Everyone turned to look at her. I'm not saying we shouldn't take the contract, she continued. I'm saying we should be mindful of what it means. We're choosing a side whether we mean to or not. The side of survival, Cookie said bluntly. Winter's coming, and this ranch needs income to sustain all we've built. After much debate, they voted to accept the contract. Captain Morrison would return in a week with the papers. That night, as she and Samuel prepared for bed, she sensed his unease. You think we made the wrong choice, she said. I think there were no right choices, only necessary ones. He pulled her close. I fought in one war already. I hope to never see another. This might not lead to war. It might not. But men with guns and conflicting claims usually do. 3 days later, their concerns proved justified. A band of Lakota warriors appeared at the ranch, 20 strong, painted for war. Samuel met them in the yard, hands visible and empty, while Eliza watched from the porch, rifle ready but hidden. The leader, a man of perhaps 40 winters with intelligent eyes, spoke English. You are Hayes? I am. I am Red Crow. We hear you will feed the blue coats. We're considering it. This is mistake. The soldiers bring death to our people. And if we refuse, they'll just contract with someone else. The result is the same for your people. Red Crow studied him. You speak truth, but truth does not change consequence. If you help them, you become enemy. I don't want to be anyone's enemy. Want and reality are different things. Red Crow's gaze shifted to Eliza. Your woman is brave. She watches from the shadows, ready to fight. She protects what's hers, Samuel said simply. Something in that seemed to resonate with the warrior, as do we all. He raised his hand in a gesture that could have been farewell or warning. Choose carefully, Hayes. Some choices cannot be undone. After they left, Eliza joined Samuel in the yard. He's right, you know. Some choices can't be undone. Then we'd better make the right ones. But what was right? That night brought no easy answers. The next morning, however, brought immediate problems. Tom rode in hard from the north pasture, his face grim. Boss, we've got dead cattle. 3 head, arrows in them. They rode out to investigate, finding the scene exactly as Tom described. But something bothered Eliza about it. These arrows, she said, examining one. The fletching is wrong. Samuel looked closer. You're right. These aren't Lakota arrows. Someone wants us to think they are, Jake said, understanding dawning. Someone who profits if we fight the Indians. Or someone who doesn't want us taking that military contract, Samuel added. They were still puzzling over it when shots rang out. Eliza felt a bullet whiz past her ear as Samuel yanked her behind a rock. More shots followed, coming from multiple directions. We're surrounded, Tom shouted, blood streaming from a graze on his arm. But even as the gunfire intensified, Eliza noticed something odd. The shots were deliberate misses, designed to frighten rather than kill. She peeked around the rock and saw movement, not in war paint but in regular clothes. They're white men, she called out, dressed like cowboys. The shooting stopped abruptly, followed by the sound of horses retreating. When they finally emerged from cover, they found a note pinned to one of the dead cattle. Take the contract and lose everything. Well, Jake said dryly, at least now we know it's not the Indians. But who then? Will asked. Someone who doesn't want the military in this valley, Samuel said thoughtfully. Question is why? The answer came from an unexpected source. That evening, as Eliza helped Anna prepare supper, the German woman said quietly, I know who does this. What? Anna, who? When I was with Wagon Train, we stopped at trading posts north of here. I hear men talking, thinking I don't understand English so good. They talk about Valley, about keeping soldiers out so they can move their goods through. What goods? Guns. They sell guns to Indians, to anyone with gold. Eliza felt the pieces clicking together. Gun runners would definitely want to keep the military away. She found Samuel immediately, and together they decided to send word to Marshal Garrett. But the gun runners struck first. That night, Eliza woke to the acrid smell of smoke. The barn was on fire. Again. But this time, as they rushed to fight it, armed men emerged from the darkness. Nobody move! The leader was a scarred man with dead eyes. Hayes, you're going to write a letter to that captain, declining his contract. Then you're going to forget we were ever here. And if I refuse? The man smiled coldly and pointed his gun at Eliza. Then you become a widower. Wait, Eliza said, stepping forward despite Samuel's attempt to stop her. You're making a mistake. Only mistake here is you talking, woman. No, the mistake is thinking you can operate in this valley without the Lakota knowing. Red Crow knows about you. He knows you're selling guns to his enemies, the Crow tribe. It was a complete fabrication, but she saw uncertainty flicker in the man's eyes. You're lying. Am I? Why do you think Red Crow came here? To warn us about the military or to warn us about you? She pressed on, seeing doubt spread among the gun runners. You think the Lakota will let you use their territory to arm their enemies? You're dead men walking and don't even know it. As if on cue, an arrow whistled out of the darkness, embedding itself in the ground at the leader's feet. Then another, and another. The gun runners spun wildly, searching for targets, but the night offered only shadows. Indians, one shouted. We're surrounded by Indians. Panic spread through their ranks. In the chaos, Samuel grabbed Eliza, pulling her to safety as Jake and the hands opened fire on the confused gun runners. The battle was brief but decisive. Some gun runners fled, others fell, and their leader found himself face to face with Red Crow, who had indeed been watching the ranch. You sell guns to Crow, Red Crow said flatly. This ends now. You can't stop commerce. This is American territory. This is Lakota territory first. Red Crow's knife appeared at the man's throat. Leave. Never return. Or feed the coyotes. Choose. The surviving gun runners chose to leave, rapidly and without looking back. As dawn broke, Eliza found herself standing between her husband and a Lakota war chief, trying to make sense of what had happened. You came to help us, Samuel said to Red Crow. I came to stop them. That you benefited is... Red Crow seemed to search for the word coincidence. Still, we're grateful. Red Crow looked at Eliza. Your woman lies well. I do not know about guns for Crow until she speaks it. I guessed, Eliza admitted. It seemed logical they'd sell to whoever paid. Smart guess. He turned to Samuel. The blue coat contract. You will take it. We have to. The ranch needs... Take it, Red Crow interrupted, surprising them. Better you than others. You at least speak truth, show respect. Others would not. This won't make us enemies? We are already enemies, Hayes. Your people and mine. But perhaps we can be honorable enemies. He mounted his horse. Do not let soldiers build fort here. That would change things. After the Lakota left, they surveyed the damage. The barn was partially burned but salvageable. They'd lost some cattle to the fire, and Tom needed stitches, but it could have been much worse. You lied to armed men about Indians, Samuel said to Eliza, his tone caught between admiration and exasperation. You could have gotten us all killed. But I didn't, and it worked. Woman, you terrify me sometimes. Good. Keeps you interested. Captain Morrison returned as promised, and they signed the contract with provisions. No permanent military presence on Hayes land, and fair dealing with any Indians who came peacefully. Morrison agreed, seeming relieved to have the matter settled. With winter settling in earnest now, the ranch shifted into its cold weather rhythm. The school continued 3 days a week, with children trudging through snow to learn. Anna's baby grew larger, and Cookie fussed over her like a mother hen, making sure she ate enough and didn't overwork. Then came the night when Anna's pains began. It was a blizzard outside, no chance of reaching town for the doctor. Eliza had helped deliver calves and foals, but a human baby was different. I'm scared, Anna whispered between contractions. We all are, Eliza admitted. But we're here, all of us. You're not alone. For 12 hours, Anna labored. Samuel and the men were banished to the bunkhouse, though Cookie kept appearing with hot water and worried questions. Catherine Stevenson arrived on horseback despite the storm, having somehow heard the frontier telegraph of gossip worked even in blizzards. First baby's always the hardest, Catherine said, taking charge with the efficiency of a woman who'd delivered 3 of her own. Eliza, you'll help me. Together they coached Anna through the pain, the fear, the exhaustion. As dawn broke, painting the snow-covered world pink and gold, Anna's son entered the world with a hearty cry that brought tears to Eliza's eyes. "He's perfect," Anna sobbed, holding her child. "Oh, he's perfect." "What will you call him?" Catherine asked. Anna looked at Eliza. "Samuel Jacob, after the man who gave us home and the woman who saved us." "If that is acceptable?" Eliza couldn't speak through the tears, but her nod said everything. The baby's arrival seemed to shift something in the ranch's dynamic. He became everyone's child, passed from arm to arm, fussed over by hardened cowboys who spoke to him in gentle whispers. Even Agnes the chicken seemed less aggressive, allowing the baby to be brought near the coop without her usual territorial display. "We're building something good here," Samuel said one evening, watching Cookie teach Anna a lullaby while Jake whittled a toy for the baby. "Something that will last." "A legacy," Eliza agreed. "Not just land and cattle, but community." Their first military cattle delivery went smoothly, the payment arriving promptly. They used part of it to help 2 more immigrant families settle in the valley following Anna's successful integration. The school grew to 15 students, and plans for the medical clinic progressed. Then came the letter that changed everything once more. It arrived on a cold February morning, delivered by a special courier who'd ridden through 2 blizzards to reach them. Eliza recognized the seal, the United States Department of Interior. "Samuel," the letter read, "your work in establishing peaceful relations with the Lakota while maintaining military contracts has come to our attention. We are prepared to offer you a position as Territorial Indian Agent, tasked with negotiating between settlers and tribes. The position comes with significant authority and responsibility. Please respond at your earliest convenience." "They want to make you a government official," Eliza said, stunned. "They want to make us intermediaries," Samuel corrected. "This would put us right in the middle of every conflict." "We're already in the middle," Jake pointed out. "Might as well have some authority to go with it." They debated late into the night. The position would bring prestige and income, but also danger and difficult choices. Finally, Samuel asked the question that mattered most. "What do you think, Eliza? This affects you as much as me." She thought of the journey that had brought her here, from desperate runaway to rancher's wife to respected member of the community. She thought of the school, the clinic, the families they'd helped. She thought of Red Crow's words about being honorable enemies. "I think we have a chance to prevent bloodshed, to build bridges instead of walls. Isn't that worth the risk?" Samuel took her hand. "Everything worthwhile has been a risk. Why stop now?" They accepted the position with conditions. Samuel would remain based at the ranch, traveling only when necessary. Eliza would continue teaching and would accompany him to negotiations when appropriate. Her quick thinking had earned respect from both sides. Their first official act was to organize a meeting between local ranchers and Red Crow's band. It was tense, with decades of mistrust on both sides, but slowly, carefully, they worked out agreements about water rights, hunting grounds, and cattle grazing. "Your woman speaks wisdom," Red Crow told Samuel after Eliza proposed a seasonal sharing arrangement. "She sees solutions where others see only problems." "She has that gift," Samuel agreed. "It is more than gift. It is courage to speak truth when lies are easier." Spring came early that year, melting snow revealing green grass and wildflowers. The ranch thrived, the school grew, and the medical clinic finally opened with a doctor recruited from Chicago. Anna's baby learned to crawl, then walk, toddling between Cookie and Jake like he owned the place. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Eliza felt a familiar sensation she'd been ignoring for weeks. Samuel noticed her hand go to her stomach. "Are you all right?" "More than all right." She took his hand, placing it where she'd felt the flutter. "I think we're going to need to expand the house." His eyes widened with understanding and joy. "You're certain?" "As certain as I can be." "Late summer, I think." He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I love you, Eliza Hayes. Have I told you that today?" "Only 3 times. You're slipping." "I love you," he repeated. "You turned a letter into a life, a business arrangement into a love story, a ranch into a community. We did that. Together." As stars emerged in the darkening sky, Eliza thought about the frightened woman who'd stepped off that stagecoach months ago, ready to run at the first opportunity. That woman couldn't have imagined this. couldn't have dreamed of the courage she'd find, the love she'd build, the home she'd create. The frontier had tested her in every possible way, throwing challenges like winter storms and violent men and impossible choices at her. But each test had only revealed more strength, more resilience, more capacity for love and leadership than she'd known existed. "Samuel," she said softly, "do you remember what you said that first day? That I could leave after 2 weeks if I wanted? I remember being terrified you would. I almost did. That first night I lay awake planning my escape." She turned to look at him. "Now wild horses couldn't drag me away. What changed?" "I did. This place, these people, you all showed me who I really was beneath the fear and propriety. A fighter, a builder, a woman capable of choosing her own destiny." He kissed her then, long and sweet, as the evening breeze carried the sounds of their extended family. Cookie arguing with Anna about seasoning, Jake teaching the hands a new card game, little Samuel Jacob laughing at something only babies find funny. "No regrets?" Samuel asked. "None, not a single one." As they sat together in the gathering darkness, Eliza's hand rested on her still flat stomach where new life grew. The ranch spread out before them. The rebuilt barn, the schoolhouse, the clinic, the homes of families they'd helped settle. It was an empire built not on conquest but on courage, not on taking but on giving, not on fear but on love. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be more negotiations between settlers and Indians, more families to help establish, children to teach, babies to deliver. The government position would bring political complications, and there would always be men like Dalton who preferred taking to building. But tonight, surrounded by chosen family and carrying the next generation, Eliza Hayes sat with her husband on the porch of their ranch and knew with bone-deep certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. The mail-order bride who'd tried to run had found something worth staying for. Not just love, though that would have been enough, but purpose, community, and the knowledge that she was helping to build something that would last long after they were gone. In the distance, a coyote called to its mate, the sound carrying across the valley like a benediction. The land that had seemed so foreign and frightening just months ago now felt like an extension of herself, wild and free and full of possibility. "Thank you," she said suddenly. "For what?" "For writing that advertisement. For choosing my letter. For giving me time to choose you back. For showing me that freedom isn't about running away, it's about choosing to stay." "Thank you," he replied, "for being brave enough to answer a stranger's advertisement, for staying when you could have run, for fighting beside me, for teaching me that partnership doubles joy and halves sorrow." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars wheeled overhead, two people who'd found each other across impossible distance and built something beautiful from desperate circumstances. The frontier had made them, tested them, and ultimately blessed them with a love story that would be told around valley campfires for generations. The mail-order bride had become a frontier legend, not through running away, but through standing firm, not through accepting circumstances, but through changing them, not through settling for safety, but through choosing love despite the danger. And as the night deepened around them, Eliza Hayes knew that every hard choice, every moment of fear conquered, every battle fought had been worth it for this moment, this life, this love that had transformed a business arrangement into a romance for the ages. "Home," she thought, listening to Samuel's steady breathing beside her. "I'm home."